Liners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. I'll also be mucking the week with comedian Francis Forster. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Port of Dover has apologised to passengers for delays of up to several hours caused by high volumes of coaches. The port, which has declared a critical incident, says it's deeply frustrated at travellers being held up for their Easter getaway. It said the significant hold-ups are due to lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says families trying to get on holiday will be frustrated yet again.
I think the nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover, and the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
A man accused of murdering a father and son in Cambridgeshire has been remanded in custody. 66-year-old Stephen Alderton has appeared at Huntingdon Magistrates Court charged with 2 counts of murder and possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot 6 miles apart on Wednesday. A hearing will take place in Cambridge Crown Court on Monday. Millions of the lowest paid workers are getting a salary boost from today as the minimum wage is increased. The hourly rate goes up from £9.50 to £10.42 for adults. The government says the rise keeps it on track to achieve its manifesto commitment. Suffolk police have been given until this evening to question 2 teenagers in connection with the death of an elderly woman. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield at 2 p.m. last Saturday after reports that 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor following a robbery. The 2 boys, aged 15 and 14, both from the Lowestoft area, are being held after being arrested on suspicion of murder. The government is launching a bid to help businesses use less energy. Up until now, companies have had their energy bills capped, but from today, they'll only get a discount, which will remain in place until March next year. Public bodies will be told they can save money by putting timers on light and heating and switching to more energy-efficient bulbs. The government says the move will help lower operational costs and help deliver on net zero. Water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution. The Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the courts, as well as lifting a cap on penalties, allowing unlimited fines. Environment Agency figures show there were just over 300,000 sewage spills last year. Shadow Justice Secretary Steve Reed says the Conservatives have lowered environmental standards.
Everyone is going to feel as disgusted as I am to know that there are 800 occasions every single day when raw sewage is being pumped into our rivers, in our villages, in our towns, in our cities, on our beaches. It's not just disgusting and polluting and damaging the environment, it's actually damaging business as well, because holidaymakers are not going to go to these places. The hospitality industry will suffer as a result.
A man has died after he was left seriously injured in a charity boxing match in Nottingham last Saturday. He was taking part in the ultra-white collar boxing event at Harvey Haddon Sports Village. Investigations are now underway. Social media influencer Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan have been released from jail in Romania. They're being investigated on allegations of sexual assault, people trafficking and organised crime. The pair, who've been in custody since December and are now under house arrest until the end of April, deny any wrongdoing. Speaking from home in Romania, Mr Tate said freedom at last.
I truly believe that justice will be served in the end. There is 0% chance of me being found guilty of something I have not done. I maintain my absolute innocence, and I think most people understand this, and I look forward to being home.
And the Pope has left hospital after being treated for bronchitis. 86-year-old Pope Francis was seen waving to well-wishers as he returned to the Vatican after being in hospital for 3 days. A Vatican spokesperson says he's expected to take part in this weekend's service for Palm Sunday, kicking off a week of Easter celebrations. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it is back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time to muck the week, and it's been a mucky old week. The brilliant Lee Anderson got himself into a bit of a scrape with Steve Bray on the streets of Westminster. And if you haven't already heard, Lee will be joining us here at GB News for the princely sum of 100k. Here's what happened.
I've got a 3-point plan for you.
Have you?
Get
Go on
the
then. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Get the line.
Self-employed, had a shower this morning, and my life's better than
You
yours.
don't like that one.
I do, actually.
You have to tramp.
Lee, are you going to give any of that 100,000 to charity?
Yes, 45 grand's going in income tax. It keeps funding.
Ah, right, yeah. You saying I'm on benefits? I'm self-employed, Lee. And I'm a taxpayer too.
Yeah, he's pretty much got to give half of it to the taxman. But with MPs set to get another pay rise to bring their salaries to over 86,000, most people would surely think that's more than enough. As brilliant as I think Lee is, should he be allowed another job? Should they all be? Then former US President Donald Trump has been in the headlines as he's set to appear in court next Tuesday after being indicted in New York. We don't know exactly what for or what the charges are, although they are linked to a payment made to the former porn star Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about an apparent adulterous affair, which he allegedly recorded as a business expense. He denies the affair and any wrongdoing and has negotiated no handcuffs, but there will be fingerprints on a mugshot. I'm sure he'll love that. And Scotland's newly elected First Minister, Humza Yousaf, or should I say useless, it's pretty underwhelming, but what can you expect from a man who brings you this?
One question I have is, where are all the men?
Do you regret not voting for amendments that would put rapists in women's prisons?
No, I don't.
Yeah, well, after his victory speech, he spent his first night with his family at Bute House. And he said, "My family and I are spending our first night in Bute House after today's parliamentary vote. A special moment leading to my family in prayer in Bute House, as is customary after breaking a fast together." But as one person pointed out in a tweet, he won't let women and girls in the same room as him when he's praying, yet he expects women and girls of Scotland to welcome men into toilets and changing rooms without complaint. And if Hamza Yusuf has the right to pray in peace, then women and girls must have the right to pee in peace. He's pretty much failed at everything.
Hamza, you've had a number of jobs in government. When you were Transport Minister, the trains were never on time. When you were Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point. And now, as Health Minister, we've got record high waiting times. What makes you think you can do a better job as First Minister?
And even though he said that he would like to scrap the monarchy, he's accepted the invite from King Charles to the coronation. Speaking of which, Prince Harry showed his face, or should I say the other side of his face. You could have drawn a face in it, his bald patch. I mean, he was mean enough about his brother in Spare, but people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. It's been a mucky old week. So coming up in the next hour, I'll be joined by comedian Francis Forrester, or I keep calling him Forrester, because we were talking about that, but it's Foster, isn't it?
It is Foster indeed. That's how you know you've made it in show business, Nana, when even the hostess gets your name wrong.
That's great, isn't it?
You've made it.
Yeah, he's made it. And he'll be mucking the week with me. We'll be discussing the top stories, including Hamza Yusuf and also Lee Anderson, Steve Bray, all of that. Then it's the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you believe net zero is about climate or money? The government could postpone its ban on new petrol and diesel cars by 2030, following the EU's decision to dilute their own restrictions after opposition from German car manufacturers. So, is this all about money or climate? Then at 4:40, I'll be asking, does artificial intelligence pose a risk to society? Tech billionaire Elon Musk seems to think it does. It's alongside a load of other experts. So just how dangerous is AI? What are people afraid of? I'll be speaking to tech expert Will Guyett, who'll be joining me. Then at 4:45, it's this week's Political Spotlight. I'm delighted to say I'll be joined by former MP Neil Parish to discuss all the ups and downs workings in the heart of Westminster. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. All right, so joining me now is Francis Forster, comedian, to mock the week, or muck the week. Let's not steal somebody else's show, slightly adapt it.
It's all right, it's been cancelled anyway, Nana, so steal it all you want.
That's good, good. Francis, what do you make of what is happening? OK, so let's start with the beginning. Lee Anderson.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to him joining us, I've got to say. He's one of my favourites.
Look, Lee is brilliant, but he is the Tory party's equivalent of John Prescott, isn't he? I mean, he has got that air about him that if he and Rishi were at the same schools, he'd put Rishi's head down the toilet and give it a few flushes.
Do you think? Have you met him?
No, I haven't met him, but he has got that vibe.
He's a big lad. He's a tall lad, Francis.
Yeah. So what's very interesting, actually, about Lee is that he was formerly of the Labour Party, and we know that Lee was formerly in the Labour Party because he got investigated for anti-Semitism. Indeed he did. So there we go. So if he's not going to assault me before, he is going to assault me now.
Yeah, but what do you make of their salaries, though? Because, I mean, like, 100 grand, OK, fair enough, but they're all allowed second jobs, so if we don't single Lee out, they're all allowed them. Do you think that they should be doing that?
No, I actually think that we should actually pay our politicians far more than we actually do.
Really?
Yes, because we always complain about the calibre of politicians. We always say our politicians aren't good enough. We don't have the right calibre of politicians. The politicians were better before. Well, we live in a capitalist society. If you want something, you need to pay for it.
That can't be. Look, 86 grand for most people is quite a lot of money, and they get other benefits as well. So it's not just the 86 grand. And let's be honest, they keep getting pay rises every year, which is, you know, a lot of people aren't getting that.
No, look...
They got plenty.
I disagree with you, because what we need running this country is the very highest calibre of individuals. These types of people... If they went into industry, they would earn a lot more. It is a ridiculous situation where CEOs of big companies earn treble, quadruple and quintuple what the Prime Minister earns in this country.
Yeah, but so what? I mean, like, it's like a vocational job, right?
Yeah.
If that's the case, then we should be paying nurses a lot more. You know what I mean? They should be, like, getting 86 grand like politicians. I'm sure the nurses wouldn't say, oh, that's not very much. 86 grand, I think people are deluded. £86,000 is a lot of money. It's more than enough. Why do they need more? In most jobs, it is a top wage.
In most jobs, it is a top wage, but being a politician, particularly at the upper echelons, is not most jobs. We want the very highest calibre of politicians, and you're simply not going to get that by paying 86 grand a year. And I accept to the vast majority of people, me included, that is a lot of money. But when it comes to that type of job, you need the very best, and we don't have it at the moment.
I don't think the money... Listen, I think, as you're saying that, Rishi Sunak is, with his wife, they're probably a billionaire, right? They're not doing it for the money. And that's the kind of politician, even though, I have to admit, I'm slightly impressed by Rishi. He's doing a relatively good job. But he's not doing it for the money, and he's doing a good job. And I think we need to learn a lesson from that. But what about Humza Yousaf, another politician?
Oh, Humza. I love Humza. He's so bad, he's good.
Yeah.
As a comedian, he's brilliant, because he comes out and he says things, let's put male rapists in women's prisons. And you go, you can't write this stuff. This is absolutely brilliant. We get Isla Bryson, who basically identifies as a woman because he found a wig in a skip and some Primark leggings, and now said, right, I'm a two-time rapist, but I don't really fancy going to a male jail. Let's put me in a women's jail. And Humza says yes. And of course Humza should say yes, because no one knows what a woman is, Nana. I don't know what you are.
I'm a woman.
Really?
Yes, a woman.
But what is a woman?
A woman doesn't have a penis.
Right, that is incredibly transphobic, and I demand everyone on Twitter who is watching it, cancel her immediately. Get rid of her.
No one gets cancelled on my show.
Really?
No, no one gets cancelled, apart from you. Now, get out of here. No, seriously. But I don't understand why politicians are struggling with this very simple notion of what a woman is and tripping over themselves to get it wrong.
Well, no one is struggling what the definition of a woman is. No one is at all, because everybody knows right from when they were born what a boy is and what a girl is. Exactly. It's basic biology. No one is struggling with it, Nana. What people are struggling with is they are terrified of alienating a particularly vocal minority of our, shall we say, voter base, or more accurately, those people on social media, and they're terrified that they're going to get cancelled, they're going to get smeared as transphobic, and their careers are going to be put at an end. But at some point, people need to stand up and go, look, this is nonsense, we can't keep carrying on like this, and we've got to be honest about biology.
My daughter, she said that she's terrified of all of this. She said that somebody said that there's now 100 and something genders. There's panda gender.
Yeah, of course there is.
I mean, come on. Because if you're going to do that, then every individual could make their own gender up if you don't fit into the gender one. That's why at birth they say gender.
Yes.
Male, female. So that's, in my view, there are two people. And where you fit on that is somewhere in between, but it's still a combination of the two.
Well, the reality is there's men and there's women. Now, how you feel and how you think of yourself, that's something else entirely.
But if you want to define that as gender, I mean, I wouldn't... That wouldn't be the definition I'd have put on it.
No.
But they have disassociated sex with gender.
Of course, but the reality is there's just male and then there's female. Now, if you think you want to be non-binary, then that is your right. But the reality is non-binary doesn't exist. You're male. And it sounds controversial to say that. And it's not controversial. Non-binary doesn't exist. And people go, well, I don't want to be put into a category because I'm non-binary. Well, you've just created a category.
You just put yourself in one that doesn't exist.
Yes. Exactly.
Now, Trump is... he's not going to get handcuffed, at least. I think Trump's slightly enjoying this. Don't you think Trump...
Of course. This is the best thing to happen to Donald Trump in years, because he can go to his base and go, look, they don't want me to be president, and he'll use whatever he says, it's a deep state or whatever, whatever thing that he wants to say, and he'll go, this is a reason why they're trying to get rid of me, and they are. They are trying to get rid of
him. He's right, isn't he?
Yeah, of course he is. You have got to respect a man who has alleged intercourse with a porn star, and he does it sober. 60 years old, fuelled by nothing but Diet Coke.
Yeah. And they're going to give him a mugshot as well, which... This is another bit of PR. He's going to love that. Side mugshot of Trump, then one at the front. It's going to be all...
And everyone's talking about him.
Of course.
Everyone's talking about him. And this is a reason why we all love Trump in the media or comedians, because without him, it's just a little bit boring.
Oh, we missed him. I missed him. I mean, Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe. But what about Prince Harry? Harry, now, he's obviously, they're taking this action against the Daily Mail and all the others, whatever, but we can't talk too much about that. But He arrived unannounced. He arrived in a black cab. He didn't need any security because no one knew he was coming, but he had his own people there. And he's been pretty vociferous about his brother, with his brother's bald head. I mean, did you read Spare?
Yes. Well, no, I didn't. No. I couldn't bring myself to do it. There's only, you know, life is difficult enough as it is without someone whining that they're a multi-millionaire and their life is so incredibly difficult and they're married to a Hollywood actress. It's like, I used to work in a school in Newham in East London with some of the most deprived kids in London. I think they've got a little bit tougher, Harry. Do you know what I mean? I mean, he is a ginger, so, but...
that aside.
Notwithstanding, you just go, stop whining.
Yeah.
Stop. If you don't want to be in the royal family, then I understand. Then don't be in the royal family and go and get a real job like the rest of us. But don't whine about it. Don't complain. Don't moan. No one cares.
Slagging off his brother, but literally within the first 10 pages of Spare, because I couldn't read anymore. I fell asleep. I kept falling asleep at the same bit, literally after one word after that, those 10 pages. And within those first 10 pages, I swear, he'd gone on about his brother's bald patch and how his brother is losing his looks and doesn't look anything like his mum anymore. And I'm like, look at yours.
Of course. And like, Harry has got the look of a man whose wife beats him up every night.
No, you can't say that. That's only a joke, by the way. Obviously, don't take that serious. We have no evidence of that.
No, of course. But he does look bedraggled, dishevelled, slightly downtrodden, you know, like unable to make eye contact. Come on, Harry.
Sort it out.
Sort it out, mate.
Well, maybe we'll see him at the coronation.
Yeah. We will. If he comes to the coronation, please just stop talking and let it be about something else apart from you.
Thank you so much, Francis. It's really good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Hopefully I didn't cross too many lines.
No, you crossed all the right ones. Thank you very much. That's Francis Foster. He was mucking the week with me. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, I'll be asking you, do you believe that net zero is about climate or money? Following pressure from Germany and Italy, the EU has stepped back from its plan to ban all combustion engine cars from 2035. So should we reverse the plans too? Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's just coming up to 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just joined me, after 3 o'clock, sorry, I'm an hour ahead. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. We're also online live on YouTube. You can watch the show, stream it there. But before the break, I was discussing the SNP leader's gas, Donald Trump refusing to be put in handcuffs, and Tory Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson going head-to-head with Steve Bray, and of course Prince Harry going bald. Let's see what you've been saying. Who's that? That is Oscar. Oscar says Humza Yousaf is a joke. The SNP is doomed. I think you're right there. And Arnold says, hi, Nana. I think we need more vocational politicians, those who seek to represent their constituents and put their nation first and hold to an ideology like conservatism, socialism, etc. Get rid of the OBR and similar things. Absolutely, I like that as well. I don't think it should be about money either. But moving on, if you just join me, welcome on board. According to the reports, the government could postpone its ban on new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Now, that is the ban. That's following the EU's decision to dilute their own restrictions after an objection from the German car manufacturers. Now, industry giants have claimed that the 2030 goal is now untenable. It was always untenable. I saw it, you saw it. I don't know why they didn't see it. And the EU have climbed down. The bloc will allow car manufacturers from Germany and Italy. Maybe they've been watching us on GB News and maybe listened to a couple of my monologues where I've said, don't be so stupid. And also Germany, Italy, they're going to continue making combustion engines after 2035 if they run so-called e-fuels, which we've known about for some time. I don't know why they just didn't simply switch to that, but that's why I'm asking you, whether you think it's all about money. Now, this comes as Westminster claims it's still on track to meet its net zero targets by 2050. Energy Secretary Grant Shapps announced a set of new government measures, including some investment, even more in offshore wind. So what do you think? Do you think net zero is about climate, or do you believe it is about money? Right, so joining me now is Lois Perry, she's Director of Car 26, and also Jim Dale, Senior Meteorologist at the British Weather Services. Now, I hear, Jim, that you would have been in the studio. However, to reduce your carbon emissions, you took the train, and the train was, what, cancelled? What happened to it?
Yeah, I should say, yeah, I got there. I'm not going to say there was snow on the line. It wasn't that at all. What happened? I got there, looked up, 14:23 to London, cancelled. Raced across the other side. It was just about to leave. The earlier train missed it by about 30 seconds. That's the way it goes.
Well, you see, that is the way it goes, unfortunately, if you haven't got your own car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and that's the future he wants for all of us, Nana.
Well, I suppose at least we've got down the line, which is handy. Jim, you'll have to tell me how I'm supposed to feed that plant.
For the 4th week in a row. So this must be important, Nana. You know, the fact we're actually talking about this yet again and all the rest of it. So, yeah, the wheels keep turning, and for very good reason.
But they seem to be turning in the wrong direction because they're going backwards. Lois, what do you think?
Yeah, well, my opinion is that it is completely about the money. Like everything, follow the money. And you can see that because most of the policies that are being implemented in the name of green aren't that green at all, whether it's the renewables scam, where everything that is made in China, like the solar panels and the wind turbines, using electricity made from coal-fired power stations, or, you know, the green, supposedly green electric cars, which actually produce more CO2, if you believe in that kind of thing, to actually make, and aren't better in any way for the environment because the batteries and the mining. But let's look at the millionaires and the billionaires that have been made through the climate scam. You've got Al Gore, who is now worth personally $330 million since he was beaten by George W. Bush. You've got Dal Vince of Ecotricity, who's received since 2002 £50 million in subsidies. He donated $250,000 to the Labour Party when Ed Miliband was Energy Secretary, who then used public public money to give back to him. Probably it was that money that was donated. He's worth 250 million. You've got schemes like the North Sea project, which is supposed to offset carbon by burying it in the North Sea, which we're paying £280 per tonne to bury. That's our money, public taxpayers' money. You can offset it with companies in Indonesia for $10 a tonne. So if this isn't a money-making scam, I really don't know what is.
But it isn't offsetting. You're still producing the same amount of carbon.
Absolutely. So it's just about cash. Yeah.
Jim, what would you say to all of that? I saw you shaking your head to bits of what Lois was saying.
There's a lot in it. I mean, a lot of that is straws in the wind. We've kind of been there before. You can pick and choose little bits and pieces. Look, actually, there's no conflict between the green revolution, aiming for net zero, and the economic side of things. Just a few figures for you. The net zero economy in Britain, according to the British Industry report, January 2023, so very recently, generated £71 billion in the UK, and that's going in one direction only. The net zero economy was 1.7 times more productive than the national average for UK economy, according to the GVA per employee in 2022. And I could go on and on. Electric car sales increased by 40% in 2022. Now, you're saying you're picking on a few people making some money in some places. I think that's always been the case. I think we just have to look at the fossil fuel industry and the Shells and the Essos who are walking away with massive profits and hardly giving them back whatsoever. So look, the green revolution will continue on. That step backwards that you talked about in Germany, I mentioned last week. I said this isn't a straight line. There will always be one step forward, two steps forward, one step back. This may be a small step backwards, but the revolution continues.
Well, you say it's not a straight line. It seems like a pretty crooked one. Lois?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why Germany has done this is because it's not commercially viable. In a free market, things happen that are supposed to happen that actually make money. If the government has to get involved at any point in terms of subsidies or making it more expensive to have fossil fuels, to make renewables look cheaper, or just in any way, basically, you know, getting involved with the market and interfering with the market, then it shows you that it's not viable. There would be no such thing as renewables if there wasn't subsidies. There would be no such a thing as a green economy without public money.
But you would think that actually they would put something in it if they wanted to develop it, irrespective of whether it made profit. Jim, you've got about 30 seconds. You're fine.
You need to look at the fine print of that decision, by the way, because the decision isn't just to say carry on as you are and extend it a little bit further, because the CO2 neutral fuels only, the synthetic fuels, is what the underlying score that is there. In other words, that's all you can use. And I know that's not a perfect answer, but as I say, you sometimes got to swap these things around. Look, we're on a one-way street here. I mean, me and Lois have been speaking now for many weeks. 4.25 of 6 of the political parties in this country, the main political parties, and I say 4.25, the 0.25 being the Tories because they're hardly getting there, have taken and wrapped themselves around the green revolution, going in the right direction.
And 62% of British people, according to a YouGov poll, who expressed an opinion, want a net zero referendum. And the reason they want that referendum, Jim, is because you're right. All of the parties are wrapped around this ridiculous green agenda, because it is a global agenda and it is to deindustrialise the West. Okay. And you need to realise this.
Okay. Well, listen, we're running out of time,
Let me give you some figures from YouGov, please.
Okay, go on. Give me 2 figures from YouGov.
76% believe that climate change plays a role in extreme weather. That's what we're actually talking about here.
Yeah, but that's believing. Hang on, Jim. Sorry.
Yesterday in the United States.
What we believe might not necessarily be the right thing. Some people make stuff up that doesn't exist and believe that anyway. Jim Dale, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. He's a meteorologist at the British Weather Services, and also Lois Perry, director of Car 26. Thank you so much.
See you next time.
Well, it's fast approaching 32 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, on the way, I'm going to be asking you just how dangerous is AI technology. Tech billionaire Elon Musk, alongside other experts, seem to think that it is, and they called for the pause in training of these systems. So just how dangerous is it? Tech expert Will Guyat will be joining me. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello there, it's just after 3:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Passengers arriving at Dover for the Easter holidays have described being shell-shocked by the delays, with some groups waiting over 14 hours. Several coachloads of adults and children have been there since last night. The port, which has declared a critical incident, says it's deeply frustrated by the delays, which it has put down to lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. Cars have also been caught up in the gridlock, but the delays for them are less severe. Millions of the lowest paid workers will get a salary boost today as the national minimum wage is increased. The hourly rate will go up from £9.50 to £10.42. That's for adults. The government says the rise keeps it on track to achieve its manifesto commitment. Water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution. The Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the court, as well as lifting a cap on penalties, allowing unlimited fines. Environment Agency figures show there were just over 300,000 sewage spills last year. Suffolk police have been given until this evening to question two teenagers in connection with the death of an elderly woman. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield at 2 p.m. last Saturday after reports the 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on a floor following a robbery. The two boys aged 15 and 14 are both from the Lowestoft area, and they're being held after being arrested on suspicion of murder. A man's died after he was left seriously injured in a charity boxing match in Nottingham last Saturday. He was taking part in the ultra-white collar boxing event at Harvey Haddon Sports Village. Investigations into the incident are underway. TV online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. If you just joined me, welcome on board. Now, there's still loads more to come here on GB News. Former Tory MP Neil Parish will be joining me live in the studio to talk about his life outside of the Commons and that famous tractor incident that everyone remembers. Then at 3:45, I'll be getting all the latest from the protest at Bexhill, where demonstrators have come out to condemn the government for housing migrants in hotels. I'll be back after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, The People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Before the break, we were talking about the government's net zero targets. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Peter says the Conservatives were not elected with a net zero manifesto. Although, Peter, I think they did put it in there. It should be halted immediately until such time a political party gets elected with net zero in their manifesto. Bit tricky because they both got it in there. Jeff says, I wonder how many scientists out there do not agree with any of the net zero tripe, but for the sake of their employment, they keep quiet. Good question. Dawn says, in my opinion, they want to lead the pack in green innovations, but their own behaviour proves they are not interested in the planet in any way. Absolutely true. I can see that. I agree with you. Right. Well, I'm delighted to say now that I'm going to be joined by a tech expert and journalist, Will Guyot, because we're discussing the idea of AI. Because how dangerous is it? A lot of people, this comes as the Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has said that AI technology will play a big role in the future of the way schools operate, but she suggested that it will be able to mark homework and create lesson plans and things like that. But how dangerous is it, Will? Why are people so scared of this thing?
Well, it's really hard to say how dangerous it is at the moment because the tech companies themselves are being very secretive about how quickly it's developing. The reality is, and we had this from, I think it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, the accountancy company, last week, they suggested that 300 million people will lose their jobs in the next 20 years as a result of artificial intelligence technologies being used. So we're in an interesting time where we've got to work out just where artificial intelligence technology goes. Currently, it's being very much led by us as human beings or the people who are developing it. But there is genuinely, and I know this sounds a little bit like the film Terminator, genuinely the risk that once this stuff starts thinking for itself, we're not going to be able to put the genie back into the box.
For itself, like if I've got the plug switch and I've got a little robot that thinks it's going to tell me what to do you know what I'm going to do, Will? I'm going to unplug it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I hear you saying
I understand what you're saying. I'm not talking about the vacuum cleaner moving around in your house. I'm talking about sophisticated computer code that might be mirrored across multiple servers around the world.
Like
might find out a way to put itself to somewhere else.
Like what then? So give me an example, because that Terminator robot was quite good actually. But it wasn't. I mean, obviously the good one was good, the bad one was very bad. But there must have been an off switch, and there was. You took the thing out, and if you got to the thing, and you could unplug him. What I'm saying is, what is it that people should be afraid of with AI? What does it do? Give me one example.
Well, artificial intelligence is code. It's being created for all kinds of things. One really good example at the moment, artificial intelligence is now better at detecting human organs for transplant than experts who've been doing it for 20 or 30 years, because all the information from every decision made about grading and rating human organs for transplant have been loaded into this computer technology, and it's learning from. It basically learns. Yeah, no, that's a good example.
I wouldn't be worried about that. I'm not worried about that.
Okay, so the opposite side of it, artificial intelligence decides in 10 years' time that it's going to launch a nuclear weapon because it knows better than the human beings who are launching it and are in control of those weapons at this point. The suggestion from Elon Musk and everybody this week is that the development of artificial intelligence is going so quickly. This is the idea that there should be this 6-month moratorium just to pause and suggest there's no regulation. This is the big issue at the moment. It's being used predominantly for good things at the moment, like we've said there with the detection of organs. But it could be used for equally bad things. It could be used in wars. It could be used to create killing machines, essentially. There's all sorts of things that this technology can be used for. It's computer code. It can be programmed to do anything. And at some stage in the future, it will work things out for itself. That's what everybody's getting particularly worried about.
You mean that it could make its own code, write its own code to do whatever it wants? But surely, OK, so if this thing that I've got is writing its own code, once again, I'm going to unplug it. Like, it has to be plugged, there has to be power to it. Where would it...
No.
Or could it create something where it...
You are accurate in that, yes, of course, it has to have power to it. But in a world where, let's say, for example, stuff doesn't need code for a computer program doesn't exist on just one computer anymore. So kicking the plug out of that computer would stop that iteration of it working. But it is possible for code to live in multiple places. It can be saved into various backup points in the internet. It can be available around the world. And the idea, if you're something that becomes sentient, you're going to want to protect yourself like a human being. I know all this sounds totally bonkers for a Saturday afternoon. But if there's no human regulation and no governmental regulation in the world of artificial intelligence, all it takes is for one person to push these massive advancements in science and technology forward. If somebody goes rogue and does something which does this in an unregulated way, it is going to be really hard to put that, like I say, put that genie back into the lamp.
Could it work out how to, say, harness the energy of the sun and make itself power itself? So that it could learn to harness energy, say, wind and all the other things, just through code, then we would actually lose control of it. Is that the sort of... Because as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, OK, because the weakness in the argument is that it needs power. But if it works out how to create power from its environment without us, then we are in trouble. Is that the sort of thing you mean?
Yeah, well, no, exactly. That's exactly what I mean. I mean, this can spread. This can spread around.
I did.
This
I'm teasing you.
I agree with you completely. This is the interesting thing that we face at the moment is there are so many potential applications from this. We're mostly talking about the fact that some students are using it to knock out a little bit of hooky homework at the moment. But that's just very much the beginning of artificial intelligence. And in 5-10 years' time, genuinely, jobs will be lost as a result of this technology. The 300 million number, it should not be a surprise. Governments are not talking about this at the moment. It's a bit of it's something that I don't think they understand the extent of the issue, and I also don't think they understand how quickly and how game-changing this is going to be for the world. It's not just customer service jobs that are going to be lost with this either. The suggestion is journalists like us could use our jobs. People who work in financial roles, accountants, even lawyers, high-paid lawyers could lose their jobs.
It's a lot cheaper without them. Listen, Will, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much, Will. Really good to talk. We'll talk again. That's Will Guard. He's a tech journalist. Right, well, now as the government continue to push on with their plans to house migrants at redundant RAF bases in Lincolnshire and Essex, protesters continue to demonstrate against the policy of housing migrants in hotels across the country, with local residents and campaigners attending a protest now in Bexhill. GBNews national reporter Theo Chikumba joins me now. Theo, you're there at the protest. Whereabouts are you, sorry? Tell me where you are and what's happening there.
I'm running for candidate.
Yep, so we are just outside the proposed site, which is just behind the camera, but just behind me on the left, a protest has been taking place. In the last hour or so, hundreds of residents and people from Bexhill have been here protesting about the concerns that they have and the impact this will have on the community. It's expected it will take around 6 months and altogether for it to come together, and then those who come into this country will be going into this site. And I'm kindly joined by Brian, who's been here for the last hour or so. So Brian, just tell me, what are some of the concerns that residents and local people have about these government plans?
Well, the government plans that they've got are basically, obviously, as you say, by September, which is 6 months away, to move 800 asylum seekers here, followed by December of this year to have a total of 1,200 here. Problem that the residents have got is there's sewerage problems here, there's families here, working families, and they are working families, and they've got major serious concerns. There's single parents here with children, and basically the underlying problem here, we're trying to stop this in its tracks, or I'm trying to help them to stop it in its tracks, purely for the sake of these prisons, the same as all prisons, they were built with asbestos, and there's been prison staff over the years and inmates and prison officers, wardens that have gone down with mesothelioma, from the lagging that's in this place. And the point of why I'm here today, the point of content with me, is that this prison is full of asbestos. The boiler room in there is full of asbestos lagging all around the units. There's 2 units in there, and that will cause a health disaster to the people that are going to be living in there, and also for the residents that live here. There's already a building over there, which I believe is the boiler room. All the windows are smashed, the windows are wide open that have got windows in them, and there's broken asbestos in there with particles floating around in the air as we speak. So to put 1,200 asylum seekers in there, I would appeal to the government, Mr. Jenrick, and also the lawyers, solicitors and barristers for the asylum seekers charities and their organisations to reject this site with immediate effect because of the health risks that are there. They'll say that we're going to tear it all down and rebuild. That's not feasibly possible in any form, shape or form. Within 6 months, it will take you a year or two to clear the asbestos safely and at a massive expenditure, which I'm sure the government won't be worried too much about that. But at the end of the day, you've got people living here. Any particles of asbestos here could cause long-term health issues because, as you probably know yourself, the asbestos is called the silent killer. My father was a doctor and a surgeon in London for many years, as my grandfather was as well. And what you've basically got to do is take all of those situations into consideration. And as I say, I don't believe for one moment that the asylum seekers will want to be coming into a prison.
And Brian, thank you so much for your passionate talk right there.
It's okay. Thank you, Theo.
As you've heard from Brian, a lot of people here have been sharing their concerns as well, and potentially over the next few weeks there'll be more meetings within the local area and some of those other areas, 3 locations in total across the UK.
Thank you very much, Theo. It's really good to talk to you. I can imagine, though, you know what they're going to do. They'll fix the asbestos for the people that are coming, but they didn't do it for us if we wanted to use that, which is interesting, really, and it's our money. Right, well, stay with me, because it's time for Political Spotlight. Each week I like to put a spotlight on a politician, and this week I'm joined by former Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton, Neil Parish. Now, Neil became an MP following the general election of 2010, and in 2015 he became chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee for 2 years. But last year, his time as an MP came to an abrupt end after he admitted that he was caught by other members of Parliament watching pornography in the Commons. And a few weeks ago, the former MP said that he felt like he had unfinished business and is considering to stand as a Tory candidate once again. I'm delighted to say, as you saw, he's in the studio. You're going to do it again? After what happened?
Right. No, well, yes. I mean, a terrible mistake and terrible thing I did. But I feel I've still got this inside me where I really want to try and help society, help the environment, help agriculture, help food, do all these things that I was very good at. And let's have a go back at Parliament. But if I stood again, I'd need to stand as an independent.
Yeah.
And of course, I've worked with the select committee across parties. It'd be quite interesting how we could pull everything together, because I think people may want something a little bit different in politics. However bad it was, I feel I've made my mistake. I paid the price.
Yes,
I've really got to
What was it
get
that
on
you
with
did, Neil?
Sorry?
What was it that you were doing? Why were you doing that?
That's right. Stupid, isn't it?
Well, they can see over your shoulder, because I've been in there, and the chairs are really close together. But you're just, you know how it is, though. You're just doing stuff on your phone. You think, oh, look at that. Oh, and then you're just doing stuff, and then you suddenly think, maybe forget where you are. Which is
I had, like I said, no intentions of naturally anybody else seeing it. But like I said, these things happen. It was a terrible mistake. And like I said, now I feel that, we're nearly a year on. I think, I'm very sorry I did it, but I made the right decision in going. But I still think there's a lot more in me to do, a lot to be fixed out there. I mean, we've got all the problems with the water at the moment and the rivers and all of those things where, we should have taken action. About 2017, we were pressing Michael Gove to take real action then on the water companies. It's gone on another 5 or 6 years. All of these things need sorting.
Well, you know what, though? OK, so what you did was wrong because of where you were, ultimately. But you were a very, very good MP. And you had done a good job, and you were very popular as well. So I don't think people would look badly on you to carry on. I think actually listening to you is a good decision, especially as you have knowledge of the actual rural community as well, and you're active within it, which a lot of MPs aren't. They're just representing constituencies, but they're not actually getting actively really involved in the minutiae of what's going on there. But you mentioned water companies, and even in my street, there's water companies there. They're dreading things. There's a leak there. What do you think should be happening to these water companies and the bosses there?
Well, you see, I mean, they're paying their executives and their shareholders too much money. They haven't made enough investment. It's mainly, it's water processing plants, sewage plants, if you like, which are not actually functioning properly. A huge amount of rain comes and they release it automatically into the rivers. This has been going on for too long, 300,000 times, I think, over the last year. Just crazy. And also, we've got Thames Water, 25% of the water that pumped through the pipes, if this is fresh water, actually leaks. And so therefore you're using a lot more water out of your reservoirs, drawing it out of your rivers, your chalk streams. All of these things are very important from an environmental point of view. So that's what you've got to fix as well. You see, so
that's why I think you're right to go back in there, because you know what you're talking about. And you have an understanding of how things work. And actually somebody like you would be good to deal with those water companies, because something has to happen. It cannot continue like this, because, you know, water is it's not really a scarce resource, but we're making it that way, and I don't quite get...
We are, you see, and we're like I said, we're drawing out unnecessary amounts of water. And like I said, I think this is something that the water companies have had time to fix. And I think really now these unlimited fines are right. But of course, again, the Environment Agency are going to have enough staff and enough people able to actually... Because you can have as many rules and as many laws and as many fines as you like. But if you can't actually administer it and actually make it stick, then it doesn't work. And I think that's one of the problems with Parliament. We spend a lot of time making new laws, but we don't necessarily enforce them, and that's the problem.
So what have you been doing then since you left? What's been going on?
I've been farming. We've got 30 cattle, and we've got some more arable. We're buying some more cattle as we speak. I'm also coming on GBNews and Talk TV. Also setting up a podcast. I've got a professional guy helping me with the music, and we've got some bird song to go in there, try and make it authentic. And then that again will be about making sure we can produce food and have a good environment. Make sure that we produce as much food as we can in this country, so we're not importing food from countries like Africa and beyond, which can little afford it, and they can little afford the water they use to actually produce that food. We've got a temperate climate here. You can only see Spain drying up at the moment. You know, it's quite close at home where we need to do these things. And I also want to make sure food gets out to everybody in society, because the one thing I enjoyed working as a chair of a select committee is you work across all the political parties. Let's actually look at what's good in all parties, because we spend all our time knocking each other, don't we, as politicians?
That's all they do. That's all they do.
But we don't actually sort of very often come forward with a positive idea how to fix things. And I think that's what I'd like to try and do as an independent, is to sort of bring all these things together if I can.
What do you think now as you're looking at the Conservative Party? What's your view? Rishi Sunak seems to have calmed the ship a bit. People have aligned behind him, which is, you know, that's what we expect from a leader. What's your take on what's happening now?
I think Rishi Sunak has stabilised the situation. And I now think that the members of Parliament, it's in their own hands, because if they don't actually, as Conservative members of Parliament, if they don't come together, they will be destroyed. I mean, I remember living through the 97 election, and everybody between 92 and 97 had a different idea of how to run the country. They were all very different.
Tony Blair.
And yet, you see, Tony Blair came along and the tide, and out went so many Conservative MPs. So I think if they're very sensible, they'll come together behind Rishi Sunak. It'll be interesting to see now, you know, in May now, beginning of May, when we've got the local elections. Because the trouble with politics is that it's all right until, you know, people naturally, councillors, good councillors lose their seats. Then the pressure goes back. And then if they start dividing themselves, I'm afraid it'll be fatal. Now, I think they're going to have a job to pull it back. But I think what Richie will do will start to put the pressure back on Keir Starmer to actually say, where are your policies?
And what is a woman?
Yes.
I think that's one of the... What do you think would be the weakness for Labour? Because for me, I think that actually the fact that they're unable... You saw what happened to Nicola Sturgeon. The fact that they're messing with the gender thing, I think is one of those things where, as a woman, I look at that and think, if I was even thinking about voting for them, they cannot define what a woman is, and they're going to affect my personal spaces and my safety as a woman, then I would look onto that very seriously.
I mean, I've got a daughter, we've got a granddaughter. I think, you know, this is essential that I mean, as Rishi Sunak has quite clearly said, a woman is a biological woman. And I think, you know, and Keir Starmer, you see, one of Keir Starmer's problems is not only just over this issue. You take all sorts of issues, he takes a very long time to come to a decision. And I think that will be his weakness. weakness if he makes it as Prime Minister. So let's put the pressure back on Keir Starmer. Let's actually see what he's made of. Let him actually make a decision, stand up to it. You know, we look at Gary Lineker. It took him 2 days to work out which side he was on that one. I mean, you can't do that as Prime Minister. I'm sorry. You've got to make a decision and you've got to stick to it and you've got to get on with it. And I don't dislike Keir Starmer, but I think there will be a problem with him making a decision. I really do. And I think let's, Richie, pull the party together, but I think the party itself needs to pull together, otherwise they will destroy. You know, united we stand, divided we fall, and I'm afraid that is maybe a cliche, but that is certainly what will happen to the party if they're not at all careful.
Well, listen, Neil Paris, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best. I'm sure you'll be a great independent candidate, and I suspect you probably will win your seat.
I will do my best, and it's lovely to come on and see you again, and it's all... thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Next up, our Great British Debate. I'll be asking, do you have confidence in the EU and the UK?
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon to you. It is almost 4 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Passengers arriving at Dover for the Easter holidays have described being shell-shocked by delays, with some groups waiting over 16 hours. Several coachloads of adults and children have been there since late last night. Now, the port, which has declared a critical incident, says it's deeply frustrated by the delays, which it's put down to lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. Cars have also been caught up in the gridlock, but delays for them are less severe. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says families trying to get away on holiday will be frustrated yet again.
I think the
nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover. And the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
A man accused of murdering a father and son in Cambridgeshire has been remanded in custody. The 66-year-old Stephen Alderton has appeared at Huntington Magistrates Court charged with 2 counts of murder and possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot 6 miles apart on Wednesday. A hearing will take place in Cambridge Crown Court on Monday. Suffolk Police have been given until this evening to question 2 teenagers in connection with the death of an elderly woman who was robbed in her own home. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield at 2 p.m. last Saturday. Amid reports, the 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor following a robbery. The 2 boys, aged 15 and 14, from the Lowestoft area are being held on suspicion of murder. The government says the rise in the national minimum wage proves they're doing what they can to help with the rising cost of living. Millions of lowest paid workers will get a boost of 9.7% in their hourly wage. It goes up from £9.50 to £10.42. However, the Shop Workers Union, USDO, says £12 per hour would have been the minimum requirement to help workers through the biggest cost of living crisis in 50 years. Meanwhile, the government's launching a bid to help businesses use less energy. Up until now, companies have had their energy bills capped, but from today, they'll only get a discount, which remains in place until March next year. Public bodies will be told they can save money by putting timers on lights and switching to energy-efficient bulbs. The government says the move will help lower operational costs and help deliver on their target of net zero. Around 5 million people will be able to get a spring COVID booster jab from next week. Care home residents in England will be the first to receive the vaccine from Monday. All other eligible people, including those aged over 75, with a weakened immune system, will be able to book their jab online from next Wednesday. Water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution. The Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the courts, as well as lifting the cap on penalties, which would allow unlimited fines. Environment Agency figures show there were just over 300,000 sewage spills last year. The Shadow Justice Secretary, Steve Reid, says the Conservatives have lowered environmental standards.
Everyone is going to feel as disgusted as I am to know that there are 800 occasions every single day when raw sewage is being pumped into our rivers, in our villages, in our towns, in our cities, on our beaches. It's not just disgusting and polluting and damaging the environment, it's actually damaging business as well, because holidaymakers are not going to go to these places. The hospitality industry will suffer as a result.
Ukraine's foreign minister has called Russia's presidency of the United Nations Security Council the worst joke ever for April Fool's Day. Moscow took over the presidency of the UN's top security body today. It's a role which rotates every month. The last time Russia held that position was in February last year, when, of course, it launched an invasion of Ukraine. Earlier, Russia said it plans to exercise all its rights in the role, which I can tell you are limited. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. But now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 5 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. The gift that keeps giving, Humza useless. Humza Yousaf, he's the newly elected First Minister of Scotland, is pretty underwhelming. I mean, it's only been a few weeks and we've managed to get these beauties in.
One question I have is, where are all the men?
Do you regret not voting for amendments that would put rapists in women's prisons?
No, I don't.
I mean, think what a year will bring if he lasts that long. In his victory speech as Scotland's new First Minister, he said, "We should all take pride in the fact that today We have sent a clear message that your colour of skin or your faith is not a barrier to leading the country we all call home. And that evening, he led Ramadan prayers with his family on his first night at Bute House, which is the historic home of power in Edinburgh. And he posted on Twitter, "My family and I spending our first night in Bute House after today's parliamentary vote. A special moment leading my family in prayer in Bute House, as is customary, after breaking fast together." But, as one tweeter pointed out, he won't let women or girls in the same room as him when he's praying, but he expects the women and girls of Scotland to welcome men into toilets and changing rooms without complaint. If Hamza has the right to pray in peace, then women and girls must have the right to pee in peace. And despite being a devout Muslim, he feels committed to go ahead with the gender reforms. Instead of seeing the damage it caused Nicola Sturgeon, Hamza is determined to belligerently move forward with the plan to keep the support of the Greens, ignoring what it did to his predecessor, and even though the people of Scotland clearly don't support it. Why would they? Hamza has also been invited to the King's coronation, which he confirmed he will attend. A bit hypocritical, seeing as he's an avowed Republican. He recently stated that Scotland could ditch the monarchy if it leaves the UK. He told The National, "I've been very clear I'm a Republican. Let's absolutely, within the first 5 years, that is of independence, consider whether or not we should move away from having a monarchy into an elected head of state." Interesting that he's accepting King Charles's invite. I wonder if he'll also still speak at the pro-independence rally in Glasgow, which just happens to fall on the same day. I'm watching with bated breath. And his performance in his first week of leader in the Scottish Parliament was pretty poor. Yes, Nicola is a tough act to follow, I'll give him that. But it seemed all his excuses for the ills of Scotland were because of the Union, which would all get better once they achieved independence. Unlikely with him at the helm, given his record.
Hamza, you've had a number of jobs in government. When you were Transport Minister, the trains were never on time. When you were Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point. And now, as Health Minister, we've got record high waiting times. What makes you think you can do a better job as First Minister?
Yes, I wonder what he had to say about that. He talks of how all the people in powerful positions are all white in Scotland.
Senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white. Take my portfolio alone. The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The Head of the Law Society, white. The Head of the Faculty of Advocates, white. Every Prison Governor, white. And not just Justice. The Chief Medical Officer, white. The Chief Nursing Officer, white. The Chief Veterinary Officer, white. The Chief Social Work Advisor, white. Almost every trade union in this country headed by people who are white. In the Scottish Government, every Director General is white. Every chair of every public body is white.
Pretty misleading and hardly surprising when you factor in that Scotland's population is 98% white. I mean, the Labour Party must be clapping their hands with glee. I feel sorry for Scotland with Hamza useless in charge. He's the gift that just keeps on giving. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? A poll conducted by the Policy Institute has revealed that the great British public trusts the EU Parliament more than Westminster. Now, this comes after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak solidified the UK's position outside the bloc, having now joined Asia's trade club. So who do you have more confidence in? Then at 4:50 it's Royal Roundup time, and Royal biographer Angela Levin will be live in the studio to give me all the latest from behind the palace walls. Now, on the menu, US President Joe Biden is set to decline an invitation to King Charles's coronation in May, but he has claimed the move shouldn't be viewed as a snub. Then at 5, it's this week's difficult conversation, and I'll be speaking to a transgender man who regrets his decision to change sex at the age of 42. Now, Scott Nugent has suffered from numerous medical complications since his transition, and now uses his time to advocate against it.
I tried to kill off my female self because I was sold a lie. I was sold that my masculine traits, my strong personality, thinking I was really a man trapped in a woman's body. What I should have been told, and what we should tell children, is that there is no one way for a girl to be a girl.
Well, that's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think of everything we're discussing by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, I'm going to start with you, Lizzie. Lizzie. Hums are useless. Yes, there he is.
Yes, indeed. Just when we thought we got rid of Jimmy Cranky, we have a little apprentice, don't we, Yusuf? Where do we start with this man? He has no charm, no charisma. It really has no chance. I think this is the end of him. I think it's the end of the SNP. I mean, let's look at his track record as Health Secretary. Came under fire as possibly being described as being the worst ever in that position. As Transport Minister, he was found guilty of driving without insurance. The list goes on. Now, he's obviously got this continued same obsession as Sturgeon with independence. Instead of focusing on the Scottish people, I mean, you look at what's going on at Scotland at the minute with their terrible drugs, the crime rate, the police, the education, you know, it goes on and on and on. This man is just... It is Jimmy Cranky. It's Nicola Sturgeon with a beard.
Well, I watched him in the Scottish Parliament, actually. I was watching late last night, and I ended up watching this thing, or was it the night before? And actually, even the shape of his hair was the same shape. I thought, God, even the way he was moving, and I thought to myself, my God, he's a cardboard cutout of Nicola Sturgeon, but this time he's a different version. What do you think? What do you think?
A different version of Sturgeon. Do you know what? I'm conflicted because, I mean, as you know, I support the gender recognition certificate, but I don't think it was the right time, and I think, you know, it played a part in, you know, the demise of Nicola Sturgeon. So he could turn out to be the gift that keeps on giving for unionists like myself and for monarchists like myself. If people do turn against the SNP in the next election, and they turn against, you know, what he stands for, etc., and then, you know, so they want to remain the part of the UK and they want to still have King Charles as their monarch, then I think, you know, he's the right man for the job, because I don't think, you know, even when Nicola Sturgeon said she wanted another vote, like it's still not set in stone that the Scottish people want to be independent. I don't think they do, and I think he is even further away from convincing people. So I think, you know,
but
so
even though, I mean, it's just so hypocritical. He's going to the King's coronation.
Yeah, but that reminds me of when Jeremy Corbyn went and did a few royal things, and he looked so completely awkward doing it.
Well, look, I'm sorry. Look, the trans community need to be treated with care and understanding that he's using them as a political football to score points. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, as you said there, Nana. You know, he's praying in peace. You know, well, let us pee in peace. We don't want mixed...
Well, I don't think we should bring up his religion, because obviously, you know, the separating of males and females.
No, I think we should, because, as you know, Kate, she admitted that she's a devout Christian, and her views with regard to same-sex marriage and things like that were made clear. He actually dodged the same-sex vote, so he did something else, so that he wouldn't have to...
But this is what he does in private, though, when he's worshipping himself. I mean, I don't think...
But they were Kate's own views. She said...
I know, but...
She got persecuted.
And he didn't.
I see, but his views aren't. He's not saying like everybody should worship separately. He's not like, and she, but yeah,
no,
but
neither was she.
Yeah, but her views are more to do with obviously, you know, things that have passed in the government, and
they
like,
both had the same view with regard to same-sex marriage. So
which religion had nothing to do with it altogether, to be honest.
Well, but he dodged the vote, and she obviously came out and said her views. So this is the thing: he is worse than her in terms of that view, because he dodged the vote, so he didn't really have to admit it openly or go against it, which is possibly what he's done.
So you think hypocrisy really is right?
Of course it is right. It is.
I mean, she was honest, whether, you know, you agree with her or not, she was honest.
I don't think it made a difference to her getting voted in or not, particularly.
I think it was a big deal.
But again, like, but he didn't, like, obviously, it was brought up because of her views, and she said she wouldn't impress them on the public. But then he said that he wouldn't, like, his views are with the public. So at the end of the day, like, he's just because he happens to worship with splitting up the genders, that doesn't mean that he thinks anything like what Kate said.
Yusuf is useless. He's so uninspiring.
He's
I mean, we've
hilarious.
just seen his speech. Going on, you drift
Wait
off
there.
after 3 seconds.
We were playing the clip of
It's
him
actually
falling on the scooter.
I mean, it is embarrassing.
I love it. I just
is
think it's
such
wonderful.
an embarrassment.
I do love a pratfall though. You've got to give him that. He's more
He's a gift to Labour. They must be rubbing their
And that's
hands.
very Jimmy Cranky to fall off a scooter, isn't it, really?
If you haven't seen the clip of Hamza Useless falling off the scooter, then have a look on GB News. Go and check out the show.
And we hope he didn't hurt himself.
No, he didn't. He got up. Well, go download the app if you haven't already, or check us out. We're streaming live on YouTube. But you can rewind and things like that. At the end of the show, you can check it out.
That's hilarious. But what he is actually hurting, though he didn't hurt himself there, is the Scottish people. He's not actually focusing on what's important in Scotland.
Well, he thinks he is, because I watched the Scottish Parliament. I watched him doing his speech, and every time somebody said, yeah, but this isn't good, he'd say, yes, but once we get out of the union, then we'll be able to do it properly. And it's like, well, you haven't done anything properly at all. Every single thing.
And also, that sounds a lot like Brexit. Once we get out of Brexit, everything will be amazing, and it hasn't been.
I don't think it sounds like Brexit at all.
But it hasn't been.
Trade deal with those outside of the EU.
We'll talk about later. I wouldn't call it a brilliant trade deal at all. But
Well, a brilliant alliance. Then we've created an alliance with other trade partners.
Regardless of that, I don't think them leaving the union would be a great idea at all. And and as I said, I think he will push Scots the other way, which will be good for the union. Yeah, so we should be thankful for him.
I
Really.
am thankful. That's why I keep showing the gifts that he's giving us.
Labour are rubbing their hands. They must love it.
Well, even the Conservatives have. They've got 13 seats already up there in Scotland. Actually, Labour don't have many seats in Scotland.
Well, the SNP have had a stranglehold of Scottish politics for the last however many years. So I think if this makes a difference and it evens things up, then that's a good thing, I think.
But I'm afraid that name's going to stay, isn't it?
Useless. Oh, yes. Oh, it works so well. If you just join me, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. After the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? Now, there was a poll that revealed that Great British public trust the EU Parliament more than they do Westminster. And this comes after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak signed a deal with Asia's Trade Club, strengthening the UK's position outside the bloc. But who do you think you have more confidence in? Is it the EU or the UK? And then at 5, it's this week's difficult conversation. One American transgender man will be telling me his story about transitioning at the age of 42, only to regret his decision later on. Send me your thoughts as ever. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. And there's a poll up right now asking that question. Do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? Cast your vote now.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's fast approaching 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing the SNP leader, Hamza Yousaf. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Norman says Hamza useless is accurate. Samuel says Hamza will not go to the coronation. I think he will resign before then. Yeah, that'll be funny. Angie says Hamza talks with so much anger and hatred. Is he fit to be a leader? Well, I don't think he is, actually, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great at all. But keep your thoughts coming. It's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? Now, there's a poll by the World's Values Survey, which revealed that since the UK voted to leave the EU, the number of people who trust in Parliament has dropped to a low of just 22%. And this comes as people's confidence in the European Union has risen to 39%. So, is our government failing to represent us? I mean, to be honest with you, there was a bit where they were a bit of a laughing stock. This comes as the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, revealed that Britain is to join the Indo-Pacific trade bloc in a move that she describes as a deal for the future. Let's take a look at what are some of the facts with this deal. OK, so there are 11 countries in the trade bloc, including Australia, Japan and Canada. Put together, these nations' economies, they represent about 13% of the world's total gross domestic product. And the deal gives Britain access to countries with a combined population of more than 500 million. And the members of the bloc are required to drop more than 95% off their tariffs on trade. However, Director of Global Justice now, Nick Dearden, argues that this deal means Britain has ditched environmental standards, undermined farmers and left us wide open to corporate globalisation. So for the Great British Debate, so I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? Well, joining me now is the Member of Reform and former MEP Belinda Lucy, Member of Reform and former MEP for London Ben Habib, former Labour MP Stephen Pound and former Labour Minister for Europe and writer Dennis McShane. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Belinda Lucy. A lot of people think this is a great trade deal. I mean, there's no freedom of movement, is there?
Oh, I know. This is a moderate, centrist, very normal way of doing trade deals. This is a trading bloc that doesn't require an army, a national anthem, a flag, interference in our domestic affairs or political courts. This is exactly what countries should be gearing towards, rather than the extreme version of the EU trading bloc, which is an entirely different, power-gobbling, anti-democratic beast. So I'm really excited about it. Of course, there's much more to come. And as Kemi said, it is a trade deal for the future. And I'm really pleased that finally the Conservatives are selling the opportunities of Brexit, because they've done a pretty bad job of it so far. The EU institutions that are constantly being sold to us by Remainers are so much more corrupt and flawed than our own UK Parliament. It's just that we hear less about it. We're under a microscope here.
Well, let's get Dennis McShane on, because former Minister for Europe, you'll know about that. Belinda said they're just as corrupt anyway, or if not more so in the EU. And do we just really, what do you think?
Very simply, I mean, I'm pleased with this. All it does is restore what we already had. Britain had, under the EU's got trade deals with all of these countries, bar, to be fair, Burma, I think. And we've gone back to the past and we can do trade again. It doesn't allow a single British professional, a lawyer, an accountant, an architect to set up shop in any of those countries, which we could do in Europe before. Doesn't increase. I think the total percentage increase is 0.8%. That's good over the next 20 years. We've lost 4% of our GDP, and about a third of our small, medium enterprises shut down trading now because of the extraordinary barriers put up by Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. I'm glad they've gone. I think Rishi Sunak would like to dismantle them. But we see this weekend 14-hour queues at Dover because we insist that the Europeans have to be checked and photographed, turned upside down, shaken before they're allowed into lovely England.
Yeah, but Dennis,
we can go there freely.
Yeah, Dennis, it's another country, though. That's what you do when you come into other countries. Let's go to Ben Habib. Ben.
Well, first of all, I want to endorse absolutely everything Belinda said and in equal measure denounce everything Dennis just said. Belinda is absolutely right that the European Parliament is actually fundamentally flawed. I'd go further. It's fundamentally flawed. It's not a genuine legislature. It doesn't have the right, for example, to initiate legislation. Half the legislation that the EU passes doesn't even go anywhere near the European Union's Parliament. It's done under something called special legislative process and just bypasses Parliament completely. And then the ordinary legislative process that goes through Parliament is actually all sewn up in committees before it reaches the floor. And at least with our Parliament, it has the opportunity, as we see every week, to hold the government to account. The government is answerable to Parliament. The European Commission, which is the equivalent of the EU's government, is not answerable to its Parliament. The whole thing, as Belinda said, is anti-democratic. And we've seen huge corruption with bribery emerging recently, just in the last few weeks. Qataris bribing MEPs in the European Parliament, currying favour with them. There are 30,000 lobby groups in Brussels constantly lobbying MEPs, dining them in order to curry favour to get their agenda promoted within their virtue signalling committees. So the European Parliament is a shadow of our Parliament. However you might think our Parliament fails, at least we have the opportunity to kick them out once every 5 years. So I completely denounce what Dennis says in that respect. And the CPTPP agreement that we've just acceded to is a fantastic deal. Our trade with the EU has diminished to 60% of our exports and imports were with the EU about 10 years ago, and it's down to 40% and dropping. Whereas the countries that we've just signed this great trade deal with are growing. Same populations, but much more dynamic economies. Absolutely precisely what we should be doing as an independent country. And Dennis is also wrong when he says we can't sell services into these countries. It absolutely includes our services.
Well, let's get Stephen
We can
Pounding.
sell goods and we can sell
let's
services.
Get Stephen Pounding. Stephen.
I have to say, initially, my heart leapt with joy like a spring lamb when I heard that there's this marvellous trade deal was being signed. Then I read the small print. We are now able to deal with Vietnam, Brunei, Mexico,
Don't be such
Peru.
a snob. What's wrong with them?
Are these really countries that we do a vast amount of business with?
Hold on, hang on, sorry.
Partners.
I've got to stop you.
Sorry?
These are countries that we are
in the
doing.
world. The idea is these are growing economies.
Yeah, they're different economies that we're opening up trade to. Why are you dissing those countries?
I'm not dissing them. What I'm saying is our two biggest trading partners were the European Union and the United States. Why on earth we honestly, really, realistically think that Vietnam and Peru and Brunei can replace those partners? And do you honestly think the Australians and the New Zealanders are going to do us any favours? And it's going to cause us real problems trading with the EU in the future. As for
that's rubbish. Rubbish.
I'm dissing them or not.
Absolute rubbish.
What I'm saying is that the Sultan of Brunei will not allow you to stay in one of his hotels if you happen to be gay. I mean, are these the sort of people I was going to say want to get into bed?
But listen, but we can't listen.
Do we really want to be trading?
But we can't listen. We can't legislate how other people in there run their countries. And if we are to... Hang on, let me finish. Let me finish. If we are to say, oh, you do that, so we're not going to do that, and you do that, we would literally trade with no one. And actually, no one would trade with us because they'd like, well, didn't you have a slave trade all these years ago? So I just think that we can't be doing that.
We had common standards.
Yeah, but we had a slave trade. I mean,
common standards in here. We didn't have the death penalty.
We still have common standards. We still have common standards.
I feel bad because we haven't let Stephen
These are people we can deal with, not the Sultan of Brunei, I would suggest.
OK. Ben, you were saying something. OK, no, Belinda, speak.
Yeah, so I would just say that the countries we are signing up to with this new trade deal have more goodwill towards our country in their little finger than the entire EU put together. The idea that there's this, because we're close neighbours, they're going to have our interests at heart is absolutely rubbish. The EU have shown in the last 7 years that they have the opposite of goodwill to this country. So I'm glad we're seeking trade deals outside. And we did used to, for hundreds of years, have excellent trading with countries all over the world. The EU, the cost is too great for the few trade and travel perks that are given to a select wealthy few of this country. It costs us our democratic agency. That is too high a price to pay.
Can I go to Dennis McShane? Dennis.
I think you'll find the people waiting in 14-hour queues are working-class people who want to take their children on holiday. The rich and the elite, the Nigel Farages, the Bens, they fly there in their private jets. They're not interested in how ordinary people have ordinary holidays. Now, I agree with Ben, by the way. Ben, you were getting angry again. Denouncing. I denounced Dennis. For heaven's sake, it's Saturday afternoon, my old friend.
Well, you talk nonsense, Dennis. I have to denounce you when you talk nonsense.
And you were going, no, wait a minute, I didn't interrupt you. You were making the classic mistake of the anti-Europeans. The European Parliament doesn't have the powers. You're absolutely right. The decisions in Europe are taken in Berlin, in Paris, in Rome. They used to be taken here. We're now outsiders. That's all right. We want to do that. Good luck to us all. By the way, I love the idea, Belinda, for hundreds of years we were trading all around the world. I mean, 100 years ago, we didn't even know America existed.
Well, hold on. OK, well, listen, I'm going to have to stop there because I don't want to go back 100 years. Now, listen, OK, so I'm going to ask you... I'm going to ask you... Sorry, stop talking. Stop talking. Stop. Take his mic down. Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask Belinda. Belinda, so this is... Who do you just choose one? So who do you have more faith in, the EU or the UK, Belinda? Just choose one. Which one?
Right, 100% the UK. The EU is a complete fig leaf of democracy. It's corrupt, it steals too much, and it's ever-evolving.
No, we're running out of time. Ben Habib, UK or EU?
UK. The EU is as Belinda says, anti-democratic.
It's just one word.
Fundamentally flawed.
I don't think Stephen can do it. Stephen can. Stephen, EU or UK?
I'm British. The British Parliament. The UK Parliament. That's fine.
And Dennis McShane.
I'm a former MP, the British Parliament. We were so much stronger when we also were dictating.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to all of you there. We've got Belinda Lucy, member of Reform and former MEP. Ben Habib, former... he's not a Labour, he's done it backwards now. Member of Reform and former MEP. Ben Habib, former Labour MP Stephen Pound, former Labour Minister for Europe Dennis McShane. Thank you so much, all of you. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. Thank you very much. Right, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hi there, it's almost 25 to 5. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Absolute carnage, that is how passengers arriving at Dover for the Easter getaway have described the delays, with some groups waiting over 16 hours. Several coachloads of adults and children have been there since last night. Now, the port, which has declared a critical incident, says it's deeply frustrated by the delays, which it has put down to lengthy French border processes and sheer volumes. It says it's had 15% more coaches than anticipated, along with bad weather. Cars have also been caught up in the gridlock, but the delays for them are less severe. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says families trying to get on with their holiday will be frustrated yet again.
I think the nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover. And the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
A man accused of murdering a father and son in Cambridgeshire has been remanded in custody. The 66-year-old Stephen Alderton's appeared at Huntingdon Magistrates Court, charged with 2 counts of murder and possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot 6 miles apart on Wednesday. A hearing will take place in Cambridgeshire Crown Court on Monday. Well, the government says the rise in the national minimum wage proves they are doing what they can to help with the rising cost of living. Millions of the lowest paid workers will get a boost of 9.7% in their hourly wage. From today, it goes up from £9.50 to £10.42. However, the Shop Workers Union, USTO, says £12 per hour would have been the minimum requirement to help workers through what is the biggest cost of living crisis in 50 years. TV online, DAB, Plus Radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, back to Nana.
So on the Wednesday here on GB News, I'll be speaking to a transgender man who regrets his decision to change sex at age of 42. Scott Nugent has suffered from numerous medical complications since his transition and now uses his time to advocate against it. And for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? All that on the way after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's just coming up to 20 minutes to 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Just as well you didn't hear what happened just about a minute earlier. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? Now, there's a poll by World Values Survey which revealed that since the UK voted to leave the EU, the number of people who trust in Parliament have dropped to a low of 22%. Now, this comes as people's confidence in the European Union has risen to 39%. Who are these people that have more confidence in these people? So is our government failing to represent us? Now, this comes as Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch revealed that Britain is to join the Indo-Pacific trade bloc in a move that she describes as a deal for the future. However, Director of Global Justice, now Nick Dearden, argues that this deal means Britain has ditched environmental standards, undermined farmers and left us, not the US, wide open to corporate globalisation. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? Let's see what my panel make of that, because they're back. I'm joined by columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy, also political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, Sam, I'm going to start with you. Do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament?
I'm going to shock you right now and say with the EU, I mean, even if it wasn't for the fact that we've had a bumbling, foolish, mistake-laden government for the last 6 months, a year, whatever, with, you know, numerous prime ministers, numerous gaffes, numerous this, Boris Gate, everyone Gate, Truss Gate.
What, the government that got an 80-seat majority? That bumbling?
Yeah, that was such a long time ago that the British people have completely forgotten about it. The Red Wall will be built back up as soon as there's another election. This New Deal, I don't like it at all. I mean,
what?
like, basically, this is
They're trading with Australia. You're in Australia.
This is the one deal, right? That it managed to galvanise Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden because they didn't want to join it, and here we are joining it. Well, I'll stop that now. But yeah, so I mean, it could lead to us having to accept hormone-injected beef, pesticides that we would never have had.
We don't have to.
Yeah,
we have
a
choice.
And if we say no, we're liable to get sued because basically the Canadian there's certain companies in Canada because of this deal that are suing various companies in the US, for example, for billions and billions of pounds. It's such a bad deal. But there's that for starters.
There's other things. It's not just food anyway. So if you take food out of the equation, there are other things.
Fine, but also GB News is the people's channel, as we always say, and the people have said that they trust the EU more than they trust our government. So
listen, if you ask me that question, I'll probably say, having seen what I've seen over the last few months, that actually I probably trust the EU government slightly more than this one.
Exactly.
But not because I prefer the EU, and that doesn't mean that I want to be in it. But I've just seen what we've been through, and I'm embarrassed. Lizzie.
No, but the EU... yeah, exactly.
It's more of a win by default, really,
Let's
isn't it?
Let's be honest, the EU is executive dictatorship, aren't they? The EU is do as I say, not as I do. Now, let's just take a look at them both. The joint presidents, Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michael. Let's look at them. They went to COP27, didn't they? So how did they travel? Private jets. And what else did they do? They've used 72 out of 112 foreign trips. They have used private jets.
What's that got to do with anything, Lizzie?
They've only used the famous train only 6 times. You know, they're just hypocritical.
How they travel has got nothing to do with how good the EU are.
They're going to help climate change.
Yeah,
really
I know.
Hypocritical.
Yeah, I get that. But that's minutiae compared to...
Really. I mean, she has got a point, but, you know, like there are lots of other points.
It's a vague one.
Well, but that is one of the
vague one. It's a truth, and they're hypocritical.
But
they're a
dictatorship. But they all are. No, stop. Listen, no, all joking aside, I actually prefer the UK government to the EU government simply because I look at the EU and I just think I don't see anybody... Not that I'm thinking that you should have some people of colour and things like that, but it would be nice to see some sort of variety in there. There's nothing... Also, I didn't really like the way they dealt with the vaccines, you know, when they refused to allow vaccines to come over that they hadn't purchased because they'd been so dithery over ordering them because there's such a long process to do the thing. Just the whole the way they treated the UK as a whole when we left the EU. Instead of... I don't think we expected them to be so awful about the whole thing and be so bitter about the fact
And we
that
wouldn't
left.
have had that vaccine rollout if it wasn't for not being with them. They did.
Well, also they tried to stop the vaccines that they hadn't ordered from getting across the border, which was just quite ugly, really. So I don't really like the way they operate, and I have to say that I probably trust the UK government more, but only by a little bit because of the way they behave.
But surely we want
paper.
to vote for our own MP. We can vote for governments if we don't like them. We can chuck them out.
But we
don't have to go through so many different 36 countries to get our own policies.
I know, and
through.
look what we have done. We've chucked them out over and over again over the last year.
They chucked themselves out.
Yeah, they did. But
we're constantly being told of the evils, aren't we, of the empire? How bad it is by the lefties, aren't we?
I feel like we are out of the bosom of Europe. We don't have the protection that we had. It was
we haven't got their dictatorship.
No, but you look at the Ukraine, for example, who were like dying to get into the EU.
That's because they've been bombed to smithereens.
Yeah, I know, but there are so many countries that want to be within the EU, and as I've said before, that we only left because of Boris's lies. So I mean, the whole thing stinks, and I'm so glad the British people agree.
You're wrong. We didn't leave because of Boris's lies. I can tell you one of the reasons why I voted to leave was because I didn't like the way the money situation was working. That a lot of people coming from other countries within the EU were coming here simply to fleece us for the.
Nothing has changed now.
Let me finish, because you don't even know what I'm going to say, so you don't know what has changed, because you know what I'm going to say. Because sterling was incredibly high. They didn't even live like the normal people of this country. They'd live in like one house with 20, 30 people, and so they could then take the money back, and it was worth a lot more. And in the end, it was at the expense of the people who live in this country, who could no longer afford to live in this country because it brought the wages down. So for me, it was an economic reason. I didn't like the shape of it.
Yeah.
Well, then tell me how we're better off now, then, because we're worse off.
Well, sadly, no, because Brexit would have got done, but there were Parliament, there were so many Remainers, and they were trying to stop it. It was a real botched Tory Brexit.
Well, Brexit was done, and obviously it wasn't done in the way Boris wanted. That's why Theresa May's Brexit was, drove her out of Number 10,
and then
the nightmares of Boris, and then it was just it's just been nothing but one horror after another.
Well, that's why when you say who do you have confidence in, that keeps, it's almost like a PTSD that keeps recurring in my brain. When I see the way they behave to get rid of one, and then next what they did to that poor woman.
Yeah, but at least with Parliament.
Theresa May with the kitten heels.
Oh God,
kitten heels. I hope that
I never want to see those kitten heels again.
She did the dancing as well. Oh my God!
Why can't they need to do a Crown style Netflix show about that? I mean, the comedy gold is just too much. The Mabel. I love the fact you said that.
It was Peter Crouch gone wrong, wasn't it? Kitten heels. It really was disturbing. But at least with Parliament, we can recall MPs. We vote them out or chuck them out. The government, we've got our own voice.
Well, listen, this show's nothing without you and your voices. Let's welcome our great British voices. Their opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got who have I got? I've got John Reid. Let's go to Kidderminster. Let's have a chat with him. John, what do you think of all of this then? Who do you support, or who would you trust more, the EU or the UK?
Well, now, what a can of worms. Your guests in the studio, are they at a party or something? Listen, I don't trust either governments. Certainly the adage, you pay peanuts and employ monkeys, employs to our lot, doesn't it? They've got no idea. When I talk about immigration, what are the European Union doing to stop all these people coming across in boats? And in any case, what are we doing? We ought to be accepting some of them because we're short of people, aren't we? We need nurses, we need carers, we need doctors, we need dentists, we need loads of people.
Well, it depends if those people are coming in. We might not be getting them.
Immigration policy.
Yeah, but the doctors and dentists and nurses, which we may need, they might not be the people that are coming across.
We'd never know, Nana, would we? We don't ask them, do we?
Well, we can't process them ever. We haven't done that. They're still just in hotels and wherever they are, isn't it? It's just a joke, isn't it?
To answer your question, Nana, have I got more confidence in the EU than the UK? No, I haven't. Certainly not. I think we should get our own health in order, knock it into shape and make you Prime Minister, Nana. That'd be great.
Well, there you have it. That's it. I'd do it. I'd do it as well. They'd have to pay me more, John. Thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. I'd have to take a pay cut. I'm not having that. Lovely to talk to you. That's our great British voices there. Yeah, you can be. So could you, Sam.
Yay.
Not. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua, the lefty. This is GB News on TV, online, on digital radio. After the break, it's Royal Roundup time. I'll be joined by royal biographer Angela Levin. And on the menu, US President Joe Biden set to decline the invitation to King Charles's coronation. But he has said that it's not a snub, so don't see it as that. Then at 5, my difficult conversation where I'll be talking to a transgender man who regrets his decision to transition. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just joined me, where have you been? It's all right, we've got loads more. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. King Charles has taken a trip to Germany with the Queen Consort and has paid tribute to a World War II memorial. And Harry and Meghan have both been involved with court cases this week, with Meghan's winning hers against her half-sister. That as US President Joe Biden is expected to miss King Charles's coronation in May, but he has claimed that the move isn't a snub. So as you know, every Saturday I love to give you a rundown, and who better to do that than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, well...
Hello.
It's been a busy week, hasn't it, with the royals?
Yes, it's been a very busy week.
Yeah.
I think it's been very interesting about how King Charles and Queen Camilla have got on in Germany. I thought it was quite amazing, and I thought the whole programme, it had serious things like you just said about laying wreaths, so it sort of draws a line underneath all the battles and the nastiness, and there was so much warmth. And then the fun things, like when King Charles tried to make cheese and it all sort of flung over, and he was sort of got the giggles. And I think it was actually gave them more confidence, because there were so many people there, and on their last day they were on a balcony and there were thousands and thousands of people there cheering and saying, "We want King Charles, we want King Charles." And it was just a lovely feeling. And I thought to myself, you know, there was Harry coming over, completely unnecessarily, and that here we have two much older people who are working incredibly hard. They were doing something all the time for 3 days running, you know, early morning right the way through. And I thought it was terrific. You see, Camilla even did a drawing of a cartoon character in a children's book, which was a Gruffalo, which she did really well, and she gave it to the children. And I thought, you know, she's very natural.
Well, they would have loved that, wouldn't they? Could you imagine that? You keep that, wouldn't you? And then years and years later you say, in fact, it'd probably be worth something.
Yeah, they'll put it in a frame or something. Yeah. And the artist who had done the original one was there, and he really liked it. So it was really touching. So the whole thing, I thought, was wonderful, and all those cheers and people standing for hours in the rain. And I thought, you know, people are so wrong to say he's not up to the job.
Oh, he's doing a great job.
And if you compare that to France, where there is not a monarchy and everything's run riot, what would you rather have? Well, a monarchy or...
This is a better option, and you've seen the politicians. I don't fancy any more of those. But what about Prince Harry, though? Because he's suing the Daily Mail. He's on his sick and tired of these two.
Well, what's very interesting is that he came over, but very strangely didn't let the government know he was coming, so they could provide protection. He didn't ask for a bullet related, one of those cars that you can't get any bullets through them, however hard you tried. Yeah. And also to have guards. So I thought to myself, I can't really believe he's come over here, because he said he was supporting the other celebrities who were also making a bid to get rid of all newspapers they don't like, really. And it didn't make sense to me, because he could have done it all by Zoom without coming over and actually, 5,000 miles in a private jet when he cares so much about the air quality. And I decided that it was really to show up his father and prove that he could get on the front pages where his father and stepmother would be in the middle. But of course they weren't there, because the Paris trip was cancelled because of all the riots. And I thought, well,
it's a trial run to see if he can get back, if he gets back into America or not. But Meghan's also doing something with the courts. She won her case against her sister.
Well, it seems to be that she won, but then there's been an awful lot of kerfuffle this afternoon saying she didn't win. The judge has said that Samantha, her half-sister, could sort of look at it all over again and apply of a slightly different order. So they claim that that's still going to go ahead, and she hasn't won at all. They don't know why people have won. But I'm not sure who's right. But, I mean, why do all these court cases...
But I think I think it's actually down to money. And they want money. I think they've realised that their real value is their stock price is falling. And they need to get money, and they need to do it now.
Well,
they're not going to get
live
anything.
so high standard. They actually could do a little bit less of that. I think we all have to learn to
live within our means.
Yes, exactly. And they're not doing that. And I think that's a terrible thing to do, to attack all sorts of other people so that you can make money out of it.
What about Joe Biden now? Because he's not coming, but he said it's not a snub. Is that customary? Do they normally go?
There was no USA president in 1953 when the Queen had her coronation. It's not expected. I think he also was quite grumpy where he was seating last time for the Jubilee.
Really?
Yes,
why
he was
did you
quite
say
cross.
that?
But other people say that he likes Harry and Meghan so much he doesn't want to come. But I don't think that can be true, because he's going to be sending his wife Jill, who gets on very well with Harry. So she will probably be there. I think it's quite highly regarded that she will come. But, you know, it's difficult, isn't it? There's only 2,000 people that can now get squashed in. And that was 8,000 before. So we'll have to wait and see. But he definitely won't come. I think they also don't want an 80-year-old man to come. And he's also going to Ireland the following month. So it's a long journey.
And also, I don't think he's that well, really. I mean, from his performance and all the things he's done. Well, listen, Angela, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. That is Angela Levin. She's a royal biographer. This is GB News. There's more to come in the next hour. It's 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Now, on the way, I'll be joined by a transgender man who now regrets his decision to transition at the age of 42. Then on the way, the Great British Debate this hour. Should children be allowed to self-ID without parental knowledge? First, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 5 o'clock. Good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Passengers arriving at Dover for the Easter holidays have described being shell-shocked by the delays, with some groups waiting more than 16 hours. Several coachloads of adults and children have been there since last night. The port, which has declared a critical incident, says it's deeply frustrated by the delays. It's put them down to lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says families trying to get on holiday will be frustrated yet again.
I think the nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover. And the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
A man who's been accused of murdering a father and son in Cambridgeshire has been remanded in custody. 66-year-old Stephen Alderton's appeared at Huntingdon Magistrates Court, charged with 2 counts of murder and possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot 6 miles apart on Wednesday, and a hearing will take place in Cambridge Crown Court on Monday. Suffolk Police have been given until this evening to question 2 teenagers in connection with the death of an elderly woman who was robbed in her own home. Officers were called to a house in Pakefield last Saturday amid reports the 82-year-old Joy Middleditch had been found lying on the floor. 2 boys aged 15 and 14 from the Lowestoft area are being held on suspicion of murder. The government says the rise in the national minimum wage proves they are doing what they can to help with the rising cost of living. Millions of the lowest paid workers will get a boost of 9.7% in their hourly wage from today. That goes from £9.50 to £10.42. However, the Shop Workers Union, USDO, say £12 per hour would have been the minimum requirement to help workers through the biggest cost of living crisis in 50 years. Meanwhile, the government is launching a bid to help businesses use less energy. Up until now, companies have had their bills capped. But from today, they'll get a discount, which will remain in place until March next year. So public bodies will be encouraged to save money by putting timers on lights and heating and also switching to energy-efficient bulbs. The government says the move will help lower operational costs and help deliver on net zero. Around 5 million people will be able to get a spring COVID booster jab from next week. Care home residents in England will be the first to receive the vaccine. That's from Monday. And other eligible people, including those aged 75 or over with a weakened immune system, will be able to book in from next Wednesday. Government plans that could see polluting water companies facing unlimited fines have been dismissed by opposition parties. There were, on average, more than 800 sewage spills per day into England's waterways in the last year. That's according to official figures. Well, ministers want to lift the current penalty cap of £250,000. Labour has described it as a flimsy regurgitation of old ideas. The Lib Dems have again called for Environment Secretary Therese Coffey to resign. Now, Ukraine's foreign minister has described Russia's presidency of the United Nations Security Council as the worst joke ever for April Fool's Day. Moscow took over the presidency of the UN's top security body today. The role rotates every month among the 15 members. The last time the Kremlin held it was in February last year, and then it launched an invasion of Ukraine. Earlier, Russia said it plans to exercise all its rights in the role. At least 7 people have been killed and dozens more injured after tornadoes swept through the United States. Officials say the storms took roofs off, walls were destroyed from buildings, vehicles flipped over and trees taken down. The states of Illinois, Alabama, Indiana and Mississippi have all been impacted. More on this one as soon as we get it. And this is GB News, but for now it is back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Still to come, it's my difficult conversation. I'll be speaking to a transgender man who regrets his decision to change sex at the age of 42. Now, Scott Nugent has suffered from numerous medical complications since his transition and now uses his time to advocate against it. Stay tuned, that's not one to be missed. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should children be allowed to self-ID without parental knowledge? The Prime Minister has promised to release further government advice for school teachers on how to notify parents that their children are self-identifying, following the shocking findings that schools are failing to notify parents and aren't implementing and enforcing single-sex toilets. All that and more, including my quick-fire debate and my mini quiz of the week's news. But stay tuned, all that on the way. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. And now it's time for this week's difficult conversation. Scott Nugent is a 48-year-old transgender man who has a powerful story to share. Now, Scott was a successful business sales executive named Kelly King, a top performer who earned various awards and recognition. However, at the age of 42, he made the difficult decision to transition from a lesbian to a trans man, becoming Scott Nugent. During his medical transition, Scott faced numerous complications that left him with over $1 million worth in medical expenses and caused him to lose everything he had worked for, including his home, career and marriage.
I tried to kill off my female self because I was sold a lie. I was sold that my masculine traits, my strong personality, meant that I was really a man trapped in a woman's body. What I should have been told, and what we should tell children, is that there is no one way for a girl to be a girl.
Well, his journey highlights the lack of standardised healthcare for transgender individuals and also the need for better accountability for doctors around the world. But despite these challenges, Scott never gave up. He was determined to be there for his 3 teenage children and push through the pain and adversity, inspiring others with his story of perseverance. Scott is the founder of Trey Voices, a group of trans educators who oppose radical gender activism and seek to educate politicians and families. And I'm pleased to say that Scott joins me now. Scott, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, I came across you, found you on Twitter and all the other things, and your message really resonated with me. And I feel that it's something that we need to share with people so they understand that somebody who's 42 got caught into this, that the damage they're doing to the children. But tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, my story is not unlike most stories. At 42, I was kind of in a vulnerable place. I have always been kind of a dominant person in everything that I've ever done. And I was married to a woman that used to say over the years, you know, you do that just like a man. You were born in the wrong body. Or my sister would say, you know what, you're the perfect husband. Although I didn't look or I wasn't butch. I had that really dominant personality. And I came to a vulnerable place in my life, you know, watching Jazz Jennings and all that kind of stuff. And casually I said, God, I wonder if I'm born in the wrong body. And within a couple of days, I was sitting in front of a trans woman. And one of the first things that she said to me was, well, how long have you been dressing like a man? And trust me, I mean, I had a business, female business, so you can't be super butch and be an executive. You just can't. And, but that sentence at that time just absolutely shattered me into the idea of total and complete mortification that I was born in the wrong body and I didn't know it. And everybody knew it but me. So it was kind of horrible for, a couple of weeks thinking, man, I'm kind of stupid. And then after that, I started to kind of change my life from what it would have been like if I was born a boy, then a girl. My father played professional sports. I probably would have played professional sports as if I was a man. I probably would have done all these things. I would have been lifted on whatever platform that people say they want in a boy. I was athletic, just all that stuff. And so as I go through all those challenges in my life, being gay, dealing with that, never wanting to do that, I thought, well, God, maybe I am born in the wrong body. And it was at that moment that nobody could take that away from me. That's how I started to transition.
Worrying about that moment is that a lot of young people are sort of saying, oh, well, maybe I'm in the wrong body, and they're young. So they may be teenagers, they may be, prepubescent, and they're going through that. And then adults are kind of verifying and sort of giving them the feeling that maybe they are, and then starting the process. So this started you on a process. And what was the first thing that you did in that process when you felt, okay, that when you'd heard that and it resonated with you, you thought, right, what was the first thing you did?
Well, it was God, within a couple of weeks I was on hormones, and the doctor said something to me that I probably should have paid attention to, but I was in that idea that, hey, I get to fit, I don't have to be a lesbian. I don't have to. First thing people say to me is, why are you a lesbian? You're a decent looking woman. You can get a man. I mean, your whole life is surrounded by that. And I thought, God, maybe that will make that go away. And so from that point, the doctor told me that, hey, we really don't know how much hormones to give you. We don't know. It's never been studied. We do have to give you massive amounts to kind of basically turn down your estrogen and then turn up your testosterone so you have a testosterone-driven body. So we're not giving kids just a little bit of testosterone. I mean, they have to give like 3 times more to kids that are suicidal. And it just keeps going down from there. So you said in the beginning that I almost died from medical transition, and I did. And it puts me in a very, very different situation with the fact that I have 3 kids that are at the age that these children are thinking that they're transgender, on top of doing it, on top of researching it and trying to save my own life. And here's the thing that is very, very interesting to me. And that is there are only 7 studies that say the medicalization of children is beneficial. And every single one of them has been retracted with, oops, we're sorry, doesn't work, or not enough time to say if it's beneficial or not. Now, we do have one long-term study, and that study tells us that us trans are most suicidal, not before, after 7 to 10 years, because it's a process, right? You get that, oh, I get to fit in. And then when you get to the done, you don't have anything else to do. You kind of look left and right and go, well, that didn't help. And then you have to go, hey, I still have to work on the inside. And that's why these kids are so insistent. It's because they are different. And that's what I would tell parents. Any child that says that they're transgender, first of all, transgender is cosmetic surgery. It doesn't fix anything. All the studies say it makes mental health worse. The health complications are they're astronomical. They're finding that girls' spines aren't fusing together, early onset osteoporosis, for a process that actually makes mental health worse. Sometimes just sitting in my office, I just look and I just think there's going to be somebody that comes out at any moment and say, you're on candid camera, we're not medically transitioning kids. You dork. I mean, it's that wrong that, I mean, I don't understand why people don't get it. And the reason why they don't get it is because the mainstream media is not getting it out. You know that video that I have on my Twitter? Yeah. That video that has like 4 million views? Yeah. That had over 4 million views. Now, I've been kicked off of Twitter 6 times. Since Elon has taken over, it's the reason why we're having a shift, is that people are allowed to put their opinions up. That video just is on fire. 4 million people have watched that video. And that video was basically talking to the media, telling them, shame on you. All you're doing is calling this senator over here a bigot instead of looking at the facts. And, well, you've seen it. And would you be surprised to know that not one journalist reached out to me? Now, I did get Brittany Bailey to make fun of me, but that's it. That's it.
Well,
and so
I'm glad.
society doesn't know what's happening.
Well, I'm really glad I reached out to you because I really was moved by that video. And I want to ask you, so what were your complications then? Because you said you almost died. What happened to you? Why did you almost die?
Well, there were some problems with the surgery. And first of all, I got my bladder nicked, one of my first surgeries. I didn't have much problem until I got to the end, and which was, blood stuff and having to be on blood thinners, and it does affect your heart and all that kind of stuff. Until I had a bottom surgery, and the bottom surgery, basically after that surgery that I now know I should have never gotten because I have blood issues. I had a pulmonary embolism that induced a stress heart attack. After that, it was actually one of the biggest heart attacks in the state of Kansas, by the way, in the state of Texas, by the way. And after that, I found out that I had a ligament sticking through my arm. I had no clue. I went to the doctor, the trans doctor, and he's like, "Oh no, you're fine." The next day, I'm in surgery for that. I go back to the doctor, and I show him something here that I have an infection in this side where they put that tube in. He says, "Oh, you're great." I'm in an ambulance 2 days later with sepsis. Then I started to feel better, and then I started to feel like hell. And nobody could help me. I lost my insurance. My transgender surgeon in Texas, he had 9 medical malpractice cases against him in California, banned from conducting surgery in San Francisco, moves to Texas where they have a tort reform act and our governor takes millions from gender clinics. He basically, I was in and out of the hospital. He never put me in the hospital. And I spent 17 months with a reoccurring infection. And that reoccurring infection got so bad that I lost everything. That's how I lost everything. How I know it's experimental is because I had to figure out what was wrong with me first. Second of all, I had to get on state-funded insurance because I lost everything. I couldn't find anybody in the state that I was in that knew what to do with me. Oh, it's experimental. And they found that I had 6 inches of hair on the inside of my urethra. So that caused a 17-month infection. Towards the end, I was still working so I could get insurance, but I had an IV sick tube in my arm. Before I went to work, I would go get IV antibiotics for 30 days. On the weekends, I would check myself from the hospital and then check myself out because I didn't have insurance. Nobody would help me with it. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
And finally, so because we're running out of time, in terms of maintaining this whole thing, is there a lot of maintenance in it? Because people think you've had the surgery, now you can just go away. Or what do you have to do? Do you have to take drugs every day? We've got about a minute left. What's your...
Okay, no. As far as the surgeries, the bottom surgeries, they're notorious for bladder infections. They do become life-saving after antibiotics don't work anymore. So reoccurring bladder infections are one. Heart issues, lung issues. You have to be on synthetic hormones if you have a full, complete 100% transition. So there are enormous amounts of health issues for a process that makes mental health worse. It's like I said, I'm on candid camera. I'm waiting for him to pop out anytime.
Has it shortened your life? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it has. Testosterone and cross-sex hormones actually shorten your life 10 to 15%. That's a fact. But I have congestive heart failure from my heart attack. I have, lung damage. I get reoccurring infections still. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to be here very long.
Do you wish you hadn't done it?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, medical transition doesn't fix anything. And unfortunately, people don't realize that. And the people with true gender dysphoria, which is a serious mental illness, those are the ones that are killing themselves at 7 to 10 years, because those are the people that are being medically transitioned for a delusion. It's the people that know it's cosmetic surgery that do halfway decent.
Okay, well, listen, if people want to follow your work and what you're doing, where can they find you?
Well, Trey Voices, trevoices.org. I'm on a tour right now in the state to state, bill to bill, got 7 bills passed. I'm thinking of going to the UK if anybody knows how to put something together. People need to hear this. And unfortunately, yeah.
Come to the UK.
The media's not doing it.
We'll try and get it fixed, but you'll come to GB News first, yeah? Scott, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Scott. It's really good to talk to you. Take care. We'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you very much. That is Scott Nugent. He's the founder of Trey Voices. Well, on this particular issue, Stonewall have previously said most people who transition do so without any regrets. Detransitioning is very rare, but it does happen. A research analysis showed that 3,000 of the 3,398 trans patients who had appointments at an NHS gender identity service between 2016 and 17, less than 1% said in those appointments that they had experienced transition-related regret or had detransitioned. Detransition does not, in and of itself, mean regret. It can mean that a person no longer identifies as trans or feel that they now are different. They are now a different gender to the one they previously identified as. Right, so coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. I'm staying with a similar subject, and I'm asking, should children be allowed to change their gender self-identity without the knowledge of their parents? We'll be hearing all sides of the argument. We'll be back after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We're the People's Channel. Don't forget as well, you can stream us live on YouTube. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should children be allowed to self-ID without parental knowledge? Now, following the controversial findings in the report by the Policy Exchange, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has promised to announce new government guidance for school teachers on how to tackle the growing trans issue. That includes further guidance on the importance of schools notifying parents about their children self-identifying. Now, the report by the right-leaning think tank Policy Exchange was made up of findings from over 300 Freedom of Information requests that were sent to secondary schools in England, where it suggested that some schools do not maintain single-sex toilets or changing rooms. Now, the Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who has been outspoken on gender issues, said that policy exchange exposes the reality that this ideology is widespread across secondary schools, and this government has failed children by allowing partisan beliefs to become entrenched within the education system. Meanwhile, the opposition has failed to pull them up on it. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should children be allowed to self-ID without parental knowledge? Right, I'm joined now by Peter Tatchell. He's an LGBTQ activist and the director of Peter Tatchell Foundation. Debbie Hayton, who's a transgender teacher and journalist. Nick Tenkoni, he's the CEO of Turning Point. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Peter. Peter, a lot of schools seem to be doing this, potentially knowing about this, but not letting the parents know. Do you think it's acceptable?
Well, the number one priority in every case must be the welfare and well-being of the young person. That comes before anything else. And we know that young people who do self-ID to affirm their trans identity, they are much happier, they have much less anxiety, depression, self-harm. So these are good reasons why we should listen to young people who identify as trans. Of course, it is always best that the school does inform and consult with the parents, but this should be done with the agreement of the young person themselves, because sadly, there are some parents who, if they knew their child was identifying as trans, would subject them to verbal abuse, threats, and even physical violence. And we cannot allow that to happen. We must not risk young people's welfare by recklessly, regardless of the circumstances, informing parents.
Well, let's go to Debbie Hayton. Debbie, you're also a teacher, aren't you? Well, what was your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are this is a major issue in a child's life. We have safeguarding policies in school which mean that we inform people who need to know, and that includes parents. We should be following exactly the same procedures in this case as we would in any other case. And quite frankly, Peter mentioned parents, those parents Peter mentioned. If that's the case, then we should be involving social services and external agencies if we really have that concern about parents. But simply not to tell parents, it's a dereliction of our duty. Hey, we don't change the GCSE option without a parental signature. Here, children may be setting out on a path to change their gender, and we're not even informing those parents.
OK, Nick.
Nana, if you'd like to ask me the question you asked Peter, I'd like to answer it. Should children be allowed to self-ID? No. Peter, I think that's probably one of the most awful things I've ever heard. I'm aware of who you are. I've checked out your Twitter. Kudos to you for standing up for what you believe in this lifetime. You've obviously achieved an awful lot, and as an activist, I respect that. But what an awful thing to say. Let's just unpack what you said. The parents will beat the child potentially when they come home and question their ID, their gender, their biology, for example. And what an absolute load of nonsense. That children should not be allowed to self-ID, and this radical agenda has to be stopped. And the notion that we need to safeguard, I think you span it, that we have to safeguard children because of fear of what might happen to them at home for being taught this far left radical nonsense. It's nonsensical. It's madness. I'm really surprised that you'd say that.
Peter, you please respond.
Well, first of all, let's be clear. There are trans people in our society. Many realize they're trans at a young age. To deny them that identity does, we know, lead to much higher than average rates of depression, anxiety, truancy from school, underperformance academically, and indeed, in some instances, self-harm. So we have to stop that. We cannot allow that to happen. Everybody has a right to identify how they wish. That's a fundamental principle in a free and democratic society. The idea that people should be forced to identify as something they're not, that is profoundly totalitarian. And this is exactly the same set of arguments that were used against gay people 30 and 40 years ago. We have a right to identify how we wish. And of course, as I said, wherever possible, there should be consultation with parents. But we mustn't put children in a situation of jeopardy. It's no use Debbie saying, well, if they beat the kid, then we should get social services involved. That's after the fact. We don't want kids to be beaten by their parents in the first place.
Debbie?
No, Peter. If we think that parents may do that, and that we're not telling the parents something so important because of that, then we should be going to external agencies at that point. Then, not keeping secrets from parents, not setting up a situation where children know what's going on, their children's friends know what's going on, the teachers know what's going on, and the only people who do not know what's going on are the parents. It's putting those parents in an impossible situation, and it's no basis for the children's to bring up children in that situation when there are secrets around.
Nana, if I may, sorry, Peter, I'm not having this conversation hijacked by this lefty nonsense, okay? What Debbie didn't say, what you said that she'd said, and we can all agree that obviously there needs to be safeguarding away from abusive parents. That's not what this conversation's about. This is about schools in the UK pushing a radical far-left agenda onto something that started out benevolent, like LGB, for example. It has now become incredibly evil and toxic, and it is the safeguarding issues are absolutely off the chart. It's been called out, and there is absolutely it's indefensible. And same goes with RSE and what children are being taught. It's completely inappropriate, and I'm sure you're familiar with the curriculum there, Peter.
Peter,
look, I know young trans people through the work I do. I know the trauma they go through, and when their identity is denied, I know the extreme suffering they go through. They feel totally rejected. We mustn't do that to young people. Of course, young people must be educated and informed, they must be counseled, but to simply deny them the right to identify who they believe they are, that is just so fundamentally wrong. That's what they do in a fascist regime, not in a democracy where we believe in individual freedom. It is not a far-left agenda. This is exactly what people said when we campaigned for gay rights 40 and 50 years ago. They said it was a far-left agenda. It wasn't. It's a human rights agenda. And it's the same for trans people. It's their human right to identify how they wish. And of course, schools should support them and counsel them. They should no school is encouraging young kids to be trans. No one's forcing them to be trans. Schools are simply saying if a pupil comes to them and identifies as trans, then that should be respected. Of course, there should be counselling, and of course, wherever possible, the parents should be consulted. But it should be a consultation with the young person, not just the school and the parents, but all three: the parent, the child, and the young person.
But you say wherever possible. As a parent, I would expect the school should tell me, and I would think that would be their duty to tell me. But Debbie, I'm going to give you 20 seconds to you and then a final word to Nick. Debbie.
I think, as I said, the same rules should apply. If a child comes to a school is expressing feelings of self-harm or eating disorders, the parent should be told. And the parent should be told, in this case, in exactly the same way.
Nick, final word to you.
This is a call out to the British public. It's a call out to the government to do the right thing and to end this. To the investigations have begun. They're behind the curve. If you're a parent with a child, I know there's been some tweets lately from people closely related to GB News. She's a parent, and I was very, very mixed emotions about that tweet. If you're a parent, you should know about this, and you should be boycotting, lobbying, writing to. This is a call to action to the British public to do the right thing. This is child abuse. There are two genders. End of discussion. So you need to act now, because this is nonsense. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much for your thoughts, all of you. Peter Tatchell, lovely to talk to you, LGBTQ activist and director of the Peter Tatchell Foundation. Debbie Hayton, transgender teacher and journalist. And Nick Tenconi, he's the COO of Turning Point. Thank you very much. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should children be allowed to self-identify without parental knowledge? We'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. But first, let's get your latest, these headlines.
It's 5:33. Good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. Absolute carnage. That's how passengers arriving at Dover for the Easter getaway have described the delays, with some groups waiting for more than 16 hours. Several coachloads of adults and children have been there since last night. The port, which has declared a critical incident, has put the delays down to lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. The port claims to have had 15% more coaches than anticipated this year. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says it's not the first time many families will have experienced such frustration.
I think the nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover. And the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
A man accused of murdering a father and son in Cambridgeshire has been remanded in custody. The 66-year-old Stephen Alderton's appeared at Huntingdon Magistrates Court. He's charged with 2 counts of murder and possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot 6 miles apart on Wednesday. A hearing will take place in Cambridge Crown Court on Monday. The government says the rise in the national minimum wage proves they're doing what they can to help with the rising cost of living. Millions of the lowest paid workers will get a boost of 9.7% in their hourly wage, so that will take it from £9.50 to £10.42. However, the shop workers union USDO say the government is not doing enough. They believe £12 per hour would have been the minimum requirement to help workers through what they've described as the biggest cost of living crisis in 50 years. That's it for the moment. TV online, DAB plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now back to Nana.
Good afternoon. If you've just joined me, wherever you've been, it's all right. We've got about 25 minutes left. This is GB News, live on TV, online and on digital radio. More to come. Water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution and make polluters pay. Will it end all the sewage that's going on in the rivers? That is on the way after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is GB News. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for a Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should children be allowed to self-ID without parental knowledge? Now, this follows the controversial findings in the report by the Policy Exchange. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has promised to announce new government guidelines for school teachers so that they can deal with the growing trans issue, now including further guidance of the importance of schools notifying parents about their children self-IDing. The report by the right-leaning think tank Policy Exchange was made up of findings from over 300 Freedom of Information requests sent to secondary schools in England, where it suggested that some schools do not maintain single-sex toilets or changing rooms. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should children be allowed to self-ID without parental knowledge? I know I'd be furious, but let's see what my panel think of that. I'm joined by Lizzie Cundy and also Sam Dowler. Sam Dowler, self-IDing.
Look, this is a very, very difficult subject. And while you had Peter Tatchell on just earlier now, and I agree with him when he says, you know, that there are certain situations whereby, you know, it would be, you know, dangerous for a child to... For the teacher to tell the parents, etc., because the parents might be homophobic, they might chuck them out. I mean, it's happened many, many times.
Yeah, but you can't really work like that.
However, you know, when I was given the subjects today, I purposefully called a friend of mine from school whose daughter identifies as trans, and she's 12, and what she said to, and what my friend said to me was that it isn't to do with the teachers, it isn't to do with education, it's mainly to do with things like TikTok, for example, whereby it is, I'm not saying it's like a craze or anything like that, but I'm saying it is something that, you know, that kids are seeing. So, I mean, what they need is education at school. They need LGBTQ education from a young age so that they know what's happening, and ultimately, and she said she would prefer for the school to have told her, and they did tell her. But then this is somebody who uses a different name at school and then uses her given name by her parents at home. It's all to do with education and looking after the children.
Do you know what I find is interesting? That people only listen to a minority when it suits their aims. So in this instance, earlier, or just before we came out of the break, you were saying that there's only a few people that then change their mind about transitioning.
Very few, yeah.
But you're taking note of ignoring that minority. But yet, when a minority, like a minority of trans people, want to do something, you're taking notice of the minority.
Yeah.
And so for me, I find that people seem to use the minority only when it suits them in the arguments.
Well, yeah, but you're
doing it again, though.
But your guest obviously would have gone through the difficulty to even get puberty blockers, for example. You have to go through hoops and hoops and hoops, and the parents have to be.
Not according to some of the people who got.
But again,
it's heartbreaking. One is one too many. I mean, absolutely heartbreaking.
But that's the way of life in general. Of course, there's going to be anomalies. There's going to be anomalies wherever you are.
But you would have led with the trans minority over the majority, but now you're leading and saying ignoring the minority.
No, but this is a minority of a minority. So, I mean, and of course it shouldn't be ignored at all. And, I'm very sorry for this person who had a terrible time. But, most of people who go through full transition live happier, better lives for themselves. That is true. Those are the statistics.
I don't believe that, Sam. And look, as a mother, if I thought one of my sons was going through that and had questions about their gender and their teacher didn't inform me, I would be absolutely devastated in every sense of the word. I really would.
But they do for the most part, absolutely,
well,
and they should do. I think the parents should be consulted.
Just 28% of schools are informing children of their distress if they are questioning their gender.
This is from a right-wing think tank, Lizzie.
Safety and well-being of our children is paramount. Nothing else matters.
And I agree. And that includes trans children.
Teachers are there. They are like the caretakers, and as that I entrust that teacher to do the right thing, not put their own ideologies or notions
These teachers are not putting their own ideologies. They are letting them express themselves.
Yeah, but a child can be confused about their sexuality, thinking whether they could possibly...
Of course, so they discuss it with their parents and with the teachers.
Put their own ideology onto that child, and the teacher has a right to inform their parent unless there is some extreme reason why not.
Well, as I just said, this isn't coming from the teachers. The teachers are there to safeguard and to listen to children, and they're in a terrible position at the moment when teachers are in a bad position already as it is. No one's pushing some agenda onto children.
All I want for the school is to teach maths, English, and all the other stuff. I'll do the parental stuff. I don't want them doing it. That's
exactly.
What I
let teachers teach.
Let's see what. I mean, if they've got really good scores in maths and English, then fine. But they haven't, have they? Right. Let's welcome our great British voice onto the show. Their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got 4 of you. I've got. Let's start with Dr. Seshni Muglia in Milton Keynes. Seshni, should schools be allowed to take on this information and not have to tell the parents?
Good afternoon, Nana. I'm totally agreeing with what you have said and what Lizzie has said. As a parent myself of 3 teenagers, I would want the teachers to be able to tell me about any changes. And I think withholding this information from parents who have parental responsibility is not the right way forward. But I do agree with what Sam is saying. Sam is saying we probably need to educate the children, educate parents, and more education around the LGBT should be done in the school.
That's not the job of the school. The school's got to teach them maths, English, history. Seshni, I'm going to move on to Lee. Lee, what do you think?
I think a lot of this children self-identifying anyhow, I think it's a fad on the children. It's a rebellious stage for a lot of them and things like that. If the teachers come across children self-identifying as another sex or fluid identity or whatever, they should be actually telling the parents. They're not trained in things like body dysmorphia and things like that. That's a medical intervention that needs to be happening there. And so, therefore, they need to be telling the parents if their children are self-identifying. I think, like I said, some purple-haired lefty teacher is in no way trained on medical advice.
Let's go to Julie. Julie, talk to me. What do you think then? There's Julie Ford, she's there in Shefford.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm not a parent myself, so I'm not saying this from a parental perspective. But for me, the schools are there to educate, and children, especially as the young lass that Sam was talking about, they're 12 years old. They're still learning, they're still growing, they're still working out where they fit in this world. And I don't think school is the right place to teach them what identity they should be. Yes, let the parents know that they've had this conversation, and the parents then need to sit down and talk to their child and help them understand where they fit in into this world. It's not for the school. They're failing already in just basic education. They don't need to add this task to their list.
It would be another failure, wouldn't it? David Barham in Watford.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Actually, one thing that everyone forgets, as parents, we are held legally responsible for our children's behaviour. The school are not liable. If a child plays truant, the school aren't punished, the parents are. You cannot have it both ways. And as you've said, a parent is the best person for a child to discuss things with. If a child goes to a teacher and explains what's going on, then the teacher can talk to the parents. But there are times, whether it's a fundamental Christian, Jew, whatever, who would object to a child transitioning. So there is a very fine line, but they're not trained to discuss this with children.
Absolutely. Listen, thank you so much for your thoughts, Lee in Bedford, Julie in Shefford, David in Watford and Seshni in Milton Keynes. Thank you so much. Those are our voices. What are yours? Right, moving on to another story that caught my eye today. Water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution and make polluters pay. Now, the Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement against companies next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the courts, as well as lifting a cap on penalties allowing unlimited fines. Well, let's throw that over to the panel and see what they think of that. I'm going to ask, I'm joined by Lizzie Cundy and also Sam Down. Lizzie Cundy.
Yes, my darling. Well, I am absolutely appalled. I live in the countryside, very near a beautiful canal, and it is full. It is absolutely disgusting.
Full of sewage?
Sewage.
No.
It is revolting. And the amount of money these water companies get is disgusting, and they do not reinvest or help the environment in every sense of the word. It is absolutely disgusting. And actually, a massive 2.4 billion litres of water a day is leaked, and the dumping of waste
Sewage.
is an absolute
Well, they're allowed
disgrace.
to, aren't they, if there's a certain overflow or certain circumstance, but they've been taking advantage of that and just dumping. Sam?
Obviously, I'm devastated that Lizzie's got a lot of sewage in her canal. But
I don't know why that sounds weird. Pardon?
and all of her dumping. No, I'm with Lizzie completely. I mean, like, our waterways are, like, we as British people, we sell it to elsewhere around the world, like, our idyllic, beautiful waterways, and they're stunning, etc. And companies that, like, I mean, either they're turning a blind eye, they're making a mistake, etc. They should be fined up the wazoo. 250,000 is not enough.
It's nothing.
No, it's nothing. Exactly. So, I mean, if they're a company where 250k doesn't really mean anything, they'll just carry on doing it. So therefore, if it hit them to the tune of, like, 2 million or whatever, that they'll think again, and they will sort their crap out, so to speak.
You're not allowed to say that.
You're allowed to say that word, but water companies have paid dividends more than 65 billion to shareholders.
Well, you know
It's
what?
A disgrace.
I would find them out of existence and then buy them back, because then we would own them. I don't think they should be privatised. I think we should need to own water, because that is the lifeblood of life. But let's move on, because it's time for our quick fire quiz, the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, your noise, please. Oh, very nice. And Sam Dowler, your noise, please.
Aruga.
Right, very good, very good. Right, well, let's... and at home, please play along. Right, question one. One man in Britain has been seen to make its goal in life to tackle potholes. But how is he going about it? Is it A, making them bigger, C, filling them with pot noodles, or C, painting smiley faces?
Aruga!
Lizzie Cundy.
C, painting smiley faces on them.
What did you think?
Oh, it's pot noodles.
Pot noodles and pot noodles. Yes, it's pot noodles. You're absolutely it's right. 1 point to Sam, yes. Mr. Pothole Mark Morrill has collaborated with Pot Noodle to raise awareness of the sheer number of potholes across Britain. Right, question two. One father in the UK has made headlines after accidentally ordering a staggering amount of glasses online. But how many did he order? Closest answer wins.
Aruga!
Yeah, go on.
50 pairs.
50?
Ooh! I'd say 100.
100.
Let's double that.
Let's see what they said. The answer is 61. Who wins?
Me.
Well done.
Sam Dowler. 2-0 to Sam Dowler. Right, well, yes, that's right. 61 pairs of glasses. Guesses you got them from Specsavers, I think. Question three. Which rare creature was spotted at the London bus stop? Was it A, a red squirrel, B, a Scottish wildcat, or C, a skunk?
Ooh! I think it is actually a red squirrel. They're
Do you think it is?
now.
They are, aren't they? The brown ones have
very
taken
rare,
over.
yeah.
Well,
The grey ones.
Well, the grey ones basically the red ones were indicative of this country, and the grey ones came in and basically killed most of them. So I'm hoping it's a red one, but I want to say skunk.
Yes, you smell like one.
Let's see. Well, the answer is a skunk. You're right.
Yes.
So
Oh my
now,
God.
Pepe Le Pew. Do you remember that Pepe Le Pew? He kept going after that cat, but it was a cat, and then he kept doing that smell.
That's it.
I used to go out with somebody who...
Yes, sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, it's believed that there are a small number of striped skunks living in the UK. They've either... have you ever seen one? Have you seen a skunk?
I haven't seen a skunk. I think I've been out with a few, though.
Not IRL. I've never seen one, and I'm interested to know what the smell was, though, because obviously, is it different to every skunk, or is it the same gross smell?
I don't know.
Back to the smell is his canal, and you might find the smell.
Right, question four. The Northern Lights will be visible in parts of Scotland over the next couple of nights. Is that true or false?
True. Ooh, true.
I'm afraid you didn't buzz before you said
Aruga, false.
It's false. Anyway, let's see if she's right or wrong. It's actually true. Oh, I'll give you the point because you haven't got any points and you can't win anyway. The answer is true. Now, this can happen every 11 years. Would either of you take up a trip to the Northern Lights? Have you ever seen them?
I would love to. I've never seen them. I'd love to do that.
I would definitely. I'm a big fan of Philip Pullman's Northern Lights trilogy and, Dark Materials trilogy. And, it's always fascinated me. I'd love to go.
Where is it? Where can you see them again?
In Lapland, you can see them, I think. Yeah.
Lovely. Right, this final question is a bit of a strange one. According to a new study, which of the following is meant to help with anxiety? Is it blinking your eyes really fast? Is it B, sniffing other people's armpit sweat? Or is it C, plucking other people's hair?
Ooh!
Lizzie Cundy.
I'm going to say blinking.
Blinking. You think that's going to help? OK, Sam Dowler.
Oh, plucking other people's hair. Like, are they? Do they know?
It's not.
Who thought of this question?
I think it'd be plucking hair. If anything.
Yeah, I think.
Is actually sniffing other people's armpits.
Back to the skunks.
Oh,
well, I'll be doing that for the whole of this show next to him and his nice tank top.
This is black and white like a skunk.
1970s.
I know it's blue.
Right, patients who completed a mindfulness session while whole exposed to body odours in a study saw 39% reduction in social anxiety, whilst the ones without body odour, there was a 17% reduction in anxiety. Do you think it's because you could smell somebody's actually there on your own?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I do smell my boyfriend's armpits sometimes. Just like... I know what. Because if you love somebody, you love their body, you love their smell. Yeah.
I don't know. I love my daughter. She's a teenager.
Oh.
Right.
Get her some Dove.
On today's show, we've been asking, do you have more confidence in the EU than the UK Parliament? And according to our Twitter poll, 13% of you say yes. You do. 87% of you say no. They're saying they got more confidence in the EU.
Yep.
Yes, they have. That's what I
Yep.
thought. Thank you so much to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, thank you very much for your company. And also thank you so much to Sam Dowler for joining me today. Thank you so much. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company too. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. My panellists will be the lovely Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly. I'll leave you with the weather. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be there, 3 o'clock.
Hello there. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. I'm Jonathan Vautry. There's still been a fair amount of cloud around throughout the first part of the weekend, but signs are that we'll see something a bit brighter and sunnier throughout Sunday. That's thanks to an area of high pressure that is going to be pushing its way in and helping to settle things down. For the rest of today, though, we do, have low pressure in charge, and this trailing occluded front just bringing outbreaks of rain to Northern Ireland, parts of southwest England, but gradually easing its way off. There will be some further rain and drizzle pushing its way into eastern coastal areas as well. As we move towards the second half of the night, though, the cloud will start to break up across parts of northeast England into eastern Scotland. That will allow some clearer spells, but also temperatures will drop off a bit more here as well, down to lows of 2 degrees across parts of Aberdeen and Edinburgh. Further west in Scotland, we'll start off the day with that occluded front still bringing some rain, the cloud persisting a bit more across western areas. But further east, that cloud is going to continue to break its way up. Southern Scotland, central eastern areas of England should have a pretty bright and sunny day and a nice one to get out and about. Still feeling a little chilly across eastern coastal areas, around 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, but move a little further inland and you're more likely to see temperatures around average for the time of year, highs of 13 degrees in the southwest. As we head into Sunday evening, the cloud continuing to break up even more, and many of us will see some clear intervals. That's allowing temperatures to drop off even more widely, though, during the overnight period, and a more widespread frost will develop. So quite a chilly start to Monday morning, but it also means it will be another sunny and bright one. And throughout the day, many of us will see a good number of sunny intervals. The sunshine a bit hazier across Northern Ireland as cloud begins to build its way in, and it's these fronts that are going to try and push their way in as we head towards the middle part of next week. High pressure, though, looks like it's staying relatively in charge, particularly across southern and eastern areas, but areas more towards the north and west will just see a bit more in the way of wet weather as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that